going to call this work session to order, being April 11th, year of our Lord 2023, 3 p.m. Invocation will be given to us by Councilmember Swanner. Any of those wishing to join us in invocation can do so by rising up and join us for a moment of prayer. Councilman Swanner.
Please bow your heads and join me in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for today, and thank you for what you've given us. Help us as city leaders and individuals do your will. Just be with each of us each day, and those that have lost loved ones, and the anniversary of the year of the shooting in Uvalde, be with their families. Lord, thank you for bringing us together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You may be seated. We're going to go out with item 3. A update from CRWD, Mr. Colewalker.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
For those of you I haven't had an opportunity to meet, I'm Cole Walker. I'm the general manager for CRMWD. I've been with CRMWD for about 16 years now. I've been serving as the general manager since December of 2021 when our former general manager retired. So I appreciate you guys having me over today. I just wanted to kind of give an update on where we are water supply wise and kind of what we've got going on at CRMWD. We'll start today, we'll kind of touch on, wanted to give an introduction to kind of to the district, a little bit about us, talk about the kind of the climate outlook, where we are water supply wise right now, talk about some of our water deliveries, kind of how they were for the past year, look at our projected systems operations looking forward to the next 60 months, and then some of the active projects that we've got going on. If any of you guys have questions as we go through, feel free to interrupt as we go or chime in, and I'll be glad to answer those as we go. So, as far as who the district is, we're a special law district or a political subdivision of the state. We were created by the Texas legislature in 1949 and confirmed by the voters in our member cities in the fall of 1949. We're governed by a board of directors. We have 12 board members, 4 appointed each by our 3 member cities, 4 from Odessa, 4 from Big Spring, 4 from Snyder. When the district was formed in the early 1950s, we served a population of about 40,000. Today, that's grown to over 600,000. Besides our 3 member cities that we provide all of their water, we also have contracts with other cities we consider customer cities. We supply probably 80 to 85% of Midland's water, about the same on the city of San Angelo, probably 25% of the city of Abilene's, pretty much all of the city of Stanton. Also supply water to Grand Falls and then Millersview Dual Water Supply Corporation. If you look at our pipeline system, the pipeline system that serves Odessa is a pretty diverse system. We have, as far as surface water, we've got Lake Thomas over by Snyder, Lake Spence, down by Robert Lee, and then OHIV down closer to Brownwood. We also have groundwater fields out west of Monahans there, and any of those 4 sources of supply can be used to supply water to the city of Odessa. Our mission statement, it's pretty simple. It's been the same since the district was formed. Is to maintain an adequate supply of the best quality water possible at a reasonable cost for our service area out here. As far as where we stand today, climate outlook wise, I know it's no surprise to any of you guys, but we really haven't had any rainfall of any significance since July of 2021. So when you look at the drought monitor, soil conditions in our area are pretty dry. If you get in the eastern part of the state, things are wet, but as you look at our area and the drainage areas for our lakes, most of them are either in severe or extreme drought classifications just because we haven't had any rain. You don't see a lot of stream flow in the rivers or creeks or anything right now. Looking forward, kind of looking at the El Nino, La Nina outlook that the National Weather Service puts out. We've been in a La Nina cycle since September of 2020, which is not good for our rainfall outlook. Looking forward, that has broke that pattern. We're in a neutral pattern right now, and everything's trending towards an El Nino cycle right now. And typically those cycles last between 3 and 4 years. So hopefully we're coming out of that negative cycle where we start looking forward to receiving some more rainfall, or at least back to a average pattern. Looking at the outlook for the next few months, May, June, July, the National Weather Service is forecasting equal chances or normal rainfall for our area, and then the same all the way on out through the summer and into the fall months. Typically, we would see most of our inflow into the reservoirs in April, May, June, and then in the fall, September, October months is typically when we would see larger inflows, bigger storms that would come through. Temperature-wise, they are forecasting above average temperatures all the way through the summer months and then on through the end of the fall as well. So it's kind of the outlook looking forward on climate. Where we sit today, surface water supply-wise, and looking at it, like I say, 2022 was not a wet year for us. We received about 37,000 acre-feet of inflow. And to kind of put that in perspective, we supply about 60,000 acre-feet of water per year to all of our municipal customers combined. So we got less inflow than what we provided last year. If you look at our average, going back through the district's history, we average about 170,000 acre-feet per year. So last year we got about 22% of our average, so a low year. Looking back, 2021, we received about an average year, even though we didn't see any rainfall or really any inflow. As you got past July, at least the first part of the year, we did have some moisture and things. It was an average year for us. Where we sit today, at Lake Thomas, we currently have about 22% of our capacity, or 44,000 acre-feet. Since July of last year, it's declined almost 9 feet. So things have continued to go down there. But if you look at historically, we're in a pretty good position there at Lake Thomas. And I will tell you that on all three of the reservoirs. If you look at historically where we sit today, we're in a pretty good shape right now. If you look at Lake Spence, currently about 17.5% capacity, or 93,000 acre-feet. We've dropped about 10 feet since July of 2021. But once again, kind of looking across historically over the past 20 years or so, we're still in a pretty good shape, comparatively speaking. Lake Ivy, it's continued to decline all the way going back to April of 2020, really going back to that fall cycle when we were entering that La Nina pattern. I really haven't seen any significant inflow into Ivy for those years. We've dropped a little bit over 15 feet in Lake Ivy over that time period. But again, if you look at the last 10 to 20 years there, we're still in pretty good shape overall. When you look at the three reservoirs combined, currently have 347,000 acre-feet in storage, or 27% of our capacity. We've dropped about 167,000 acre-feet over that same period of looking back to July, but still remain in pretty good shape. When you look at the numbers in our lakes, percentage-wise, at 22%, 17, 37, those may seem low to somebody that's not familiar with the lakes and used to looking at it, but all three of our reservoirs will never be full, or it's highly unlikely that we would ever see 100% full in the three reservoirs. So anytime that we can keep 25% in all of the reservoirs, we feel like we're doing it in pretty good shape, water supply-wise. And right now, total, we're about 27%. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape, surface water supply-wise. The other side of our supply that we utilize is groundwater. And looking at it, we've got our well fields are out in Ward and Winkler County, out west of Monahans there. We have two fields that are developed. Our Ward County South well field, a little over 12,000 acres, that was drilled in the 70s, or we acquired in the 70s. looked like the presentation went down there, but it was acquired in the 70s, and then our Ward County North well field, which we acquired in 2010, is about 12,500 acre feet. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I guess it just the projector went down there. I'll slide over here.
Let's restart it. It's up there.
Okay.
It restarted.
All right. Okay. Kind of backing up, we've got 2 developed fields. Our Ward County South well field, so it's about a little over 12,000 acre feet, or 12,000 surface acres there. Our North well field, which we acquired, the district owns it, is almost 13,000 acres. We acquired it in 2010. We have 64 wells in those 2 well fields that'll produce about 73 million gallons per day. As far as pipeline capacity back into Odessa, we are limited in how much we can pump. Currently, we have 45 million gallons per day capacity installed, so we do have excess well capacity. That way, when you've got wells down and things, you can service those wells, get them back in service, so you're not relying on having to have all 64 wells operating at the same time, obviously. We also have some additional acreage for future development. The district acquired in 1985 some property up in Winkler County, about 3,200 acres there that we have not developed yet. And we also have another lease on UT lands there in Winkler County that's about another 7,600 acres that we haven't developed either. So, looking at our groundwater and what we estimate in storage in the aquifer there, in our developed fields between the north and south Ward County well fields, we've got about 1.7 million acre feet in storage. And kind of keep in mind what I was saying earlier about we typically provide about 60,000 acre feet per year to our customers, so that kind of scales that. Under our undeveloped property, we have a little over 1 million acre feet that we estimate there that we haven't developed. So total, that's about almost 2.8 million acre feet. If you could recover 70% of that, which we feel like we could, you'd have about 1.9 million acre feet of recoverable groundwater reserves. And looking at how long that groundwater would last, we get that question quite a bit. You've got the water in the ground. How long do you feel like you could utilize that? I'm going to show you 2 graphs on it. This first graph's the way we typically operate our well fields. Typically, we use them for peaking in the summer months. We'll pump water throughout the summer months, and then we'll cycle through each month, and just for maintenance and kind of make sure all that our wells are up and working and could be utilized anytime they're needed. We pump on average about 7 million gallons per day is how we would typically operate those fields. If you were to do that for the next 50 years, you really wouldn't see any negative impacts on the aquifer. You wouldn't see, you would have minimal drawdown on the groundwater table. Water quality would still hold in pretty well. So we feel like that's a sustainable operation the way we're currently operating today. If we were to get in a drought situation where we did not have any surface water, and we were to look at bringing in 45 million gallons per day, you look over that 50-year period, you would see a negative impact. Just looking at our existing wells, we would start out pumping about the 45 million gallons per day, but over 50 years, that capacity would decline to about 35 million gallons per day. You'd have to go in and drill additional wells. You would have a significant impact on the groundwater table, I will tell you. As far as sustainability-wise, you really wouldn't want to have to do that for more than about 10 years. But it is enough that we could get by in a drought situation for a year or two if we had to completely rely on that groundwater. We would feel comfortable in doing so until we could get some additional inflow into our reservoirs. Water deliveries, they are highly dependent upon, the rainfall and weather patterns. 2021, I'd said was basically an average year for us as far as precipitation-wise. It was dry at the end of the year, but 2021 deliveries were down, but then 2022 is dry all year, so of course our water deliveries bounced back up. The upper lines are total deliveries for the district. For 2022, we delivered a little over 23 billion gallons of water. The bottom line is the city of Odessa's supply. In 2022, we supplied about 7.7 billion gallons of water to the city of Odessa. You know, one of the things I will point out, our peak deliveries were actually in 2000 and 2001. The district peaked out around 26.8 billion gallons back in those years. We still have not reached, we haven't seen that demand since then. You know, the big dip that you see on the graph there in 2011 and 2012 is when we had the drought that really started back in 2008, ranged through 2012, and the district had to restrict deliveries during those years. And water demands really, you know, are just now kind of getting back up to what they were previous to those restrictions. If you look at it overall, you know, we're starting to see a similar level to what we were before that 2011, 2012 time period. Of course, our water demands are pretty cyclical depending on, you know, what time of year you're in. In the winter time, just looking at Odessa's deliveries, you know, it's typically around 12, 13 million gallons per day that Odessa uses. In the summer months, that gets on up to, you know, to 28 to 30 million gallons per day. For 2022, you know, our peak month average was 28.5 million gallons per day, which is, you know, still a little bit lower than what we've seen in some of the past years. 2020 was a dry year as well. In that year, we averaged 31.5 million gallons per day. Looking at the water that we do supply, about 95% of what we supply is surface water. So we primarily rely on our lakes, just because that water will evaporate if we don't use it. You know, and the groundwater that we do have recharges at a much slower rate than what we can pump it out. So it makes sense to utilize that surface water if we've got it, and then rely on the groundwater for time periods, you know, in the summer to use for peak demands, or at times that some of the lakes may be low and we need that water. Projected operations looking forward for the next 60 months. You know, we have right now about 36 months of supply in our reservoirs when you look at it, with no additional inflow into any of the lakes. You know, if we didn't get any rainfall in that next 36 months, you know, the lakes would essentially be dry, and we'd have to rely all on groundwater. And right now, you know, we don't have enough groundwater capacity as far as tying that into our system to meet all of our demands. You know, we do have enough to meet our wintertime demands, but not peak summertime demands. So when you look at it, in the event that we didn't have any inflow, we would have to restrict deliveries once you get out past that 36-month period. And as you moved into 2026, 2027, you know, that's not a realistic case, I will tell you. You know, even on the dry years, if you go back to that inflow graph I was showing you earlier, you know, we do receive some inflow every year. Even, well, you know, in 2021, for example, we received 22% of our average. The worst 5-year period the district's had was in 2008, or began in 2008. For that 5-year period, looking at it, we still averaged 28% of our average inflow. So we feel like that's kind of, the 25% is kind of the worst case we would ever expect to see into our lakes. And if we could receive that, or, you know, in that case, we would have enough water supply to get us through our lakes to last through the next 60 months. In moving forward, you know, we do show a little bit of a shortage there in that 5th year there, moving into the summer months, but we feel like the numbers we presented are pretty conservative. As far as we don't typically see demands quite that high, so I think we would be in good shape all the way the next 60 months through, without having to restrict any kind of deliveries, even under a worst case that we would expect to see. So really, based on what we know today, you know, looking at the climate outlook, the water supplies we have, current water deliveries, and projecting forward, we don't anticipate limiting deliveries anytime in the foreseeable future. It's kind of where we are. Yeah. Current projects we've got going, you know, we've got several just capital improvements projects or maintenance projects going right now. Our Lake Ivy Dam was built, you know, in 1989. We're in the process of repainting all of the gates on that dam and doing some maintenance there. It's about a $9.2 million project, doing some reservoir repair around the district. We've got some transformer work that we're doing on our Ivy system. some cathodic protection improvements, and then some structural repairs that we're doing as well. One of the newer projects that we're just starting up, I did want to kind of point out, was on 42nd Street here in Odessa. We're going to look at replacing the pipeline, basically from the Coliseum over to the water treatment plant there, and replace all of the valves and piping, as well as do a little bit of maintenance on the reservoirs there. You know, this kind of correlates to the improvements that you guys are doing on your treatment plant there. It'll get good a new pipeline tied into that, new valves, and make sure everything's kind of coordinated together. So that's one of the newer projects that we're just kicking off. Future projects, things that we've got upcoming. Of course, we'll continue to have system maintenance projects like those that I just mentioned that we'll continue to develop and as we move forward. But the other projects I kind of wanted to touch on are expanding our Ward County system and then future water supplies. One of the things that we did right after the board moved me into the general manager position was to have a board planning retreat and really kind of develop some goals looking forward for the district. And one of the goals that they've given me is to be able to get our system in a position that we would be able to meet all of our peak demands, even in the summertime, even in the event that we didn't have any surface water. So that's one of the things we're working towards right now. One of I think the pieces to doing that is the expansion of our Ward County system and being able to increase the amount of groundwater that we can bring in to our system from the 45 million gallons per day to 65 million gallons per day. So that's a project that we're actively looking at. One of the things we've got coming up too, in July, we're having a planning session to kind of follow up on that, kind of the goals we had set in place and look at this in more detail as well. The second goal that they did kind of give me was to look at additional water supplies. I think we're getting close to a position that we at least want to consider going out and acquiring and seeing, at least in what's available, and consider acquiring additional water sources. And there's several out there that we are actively looking at as well. So, and then the other option I didn't mention we do have our Winkler County well field that we do have. That other 1 million acre feet of water in place that we could tie into, that's one of the things we've kind of looked at. I don't think it's one of the projects we're going to be moving forward with quite yet. I think we're focused in more on expanding our existing pipeline capacity coming in and also looking at additional water supplies. So that was really all I had today. I'll be glad to take any questions. Mainly just wanted to come over and, kind of visit with you guys and let you know. I mean, I know it's been a dry period here these past, 18 months or so, but we still remain in pretty good shape, surface water supply wise, to be able to continue to meet your demands and things. We continue to work with city staff to monitor upcoming developments you guys have. That's the other things. We want to make sure we stay in a good position to continue to meet your water demands. So one of the things I try to continue to work with is make sure I know and keep in contact with staff here in Odessa and make sure we can plan ahead and that we can continue to meet all those demands that you got coming up. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you guys may have.
Council, any questions other than pray for rain?
What do you need?
I was going to ask,
Yes, sir.
you're looking out to the future, so is more aquifer or surface water?
It would be groundwater, yes, sir.
Groundwater.
Most of the surface water is already developed in our area that would be practical.
And then between the Wards and the Winkler fields, which would you say is the most resilient? I'm guessing the Wards.
That is all in the same aquifer.
It
That's
is,
all in the
okay.
Pecos Valley alluvium. So you would be further developing, the same aquifer there as well on those tracts of land.
Do you have a projected date for the 42nd Street project as far as what you were discussing earlier?
That project, we look to take about 30 months to complete. It's in the engineering phase right now. We're looking at doing the engineering on it. It'll take it probably the next 10 months to complete the engineering, get it bid out, and then probably 24 months after that to complete the construction on it.
So it's a little bit, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Council, any further questions, discussion?
I know you probably get this question a lot. What about moving water from the east this way? From where there's plenty of water? Pipelining. We're great at pipelines.
Yes,
We
sir.
always keep bringing, I hear this all the time, and so for me,
The transportation cost makes it prohibitive. You know, when you start looking at, there's other water available in our area that would be much cheaper to develop than going to the east.
but is it to delete our aquifers down to where it's useless? Is that what this is gonna
No, and
wind
some
up
of the
doing?
other, the aquifers and things that we're looking at recharge at higher rates as well, so,
Okay,
no, I mean.
I know that was a stupid
Yes, sir.
question, but I
No,
hear it all
it's
the
not.
time.
I mean, they've been looking at that for a lot of years. You know, there's been studies on bringing water from the east. And it all comes down to the transportation cost is astronomical, really. what it-
He was talking about that the other day, the oil.
No.
Any further questions? I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to item 4. Discuss and approve Performance Services Incorporated, PSI. It's an energy service provider that allows interim city manager to contact with Performance Services. Chip Wood. We're out of order here.
Cool. Is that all on your screens?
Yes. Yeah.
I am Jenna Shadowitz. I am one of the business development managers. You've all met Chip Woods.
Yep.
And then we've got Ryan Quigley. He is our water and wastewater specialist. And Cy, I'm so sorry, Jansen. He is our lead engineer. I do want to address something real quick. I did notice that there was an Odessa American article, and I wanted to talk about that briefly. Our company, Performance Services, was written up about that. We, in 2021, had a rogue employee, and he was working with some cities, and then in the valley, some of that stuff was under investigation. At no point was Performance Services ever the focus, and we are not under investigation. And it is worth noting, no previous employee or current employee has been indicted in the entire Hidalgo County situation. So I just wanted to get that out there. We are very transparent. We're happy to always get you with our in-house counsel or any of our attorneys to answer more questions. So just to review who we are, I know Chip came out here 2 months ago and briefly talked about us. We work entirely in the public sector. Everything we do is with municipals and independent school districts. Everything is vendor neutral and open book, and all of our work goes through the legislation that I'll get into in just a minute. We have over 600 projects, and we're above $2 billion worth of work completed, and it is worth noting that we have over 56% repeat customers. So when we're talking cities and schools, that's a pretty good number. Some of our references, top one, I think you might have heard of them, Odessa College. We currently work out there, and our team that's here, as well as our project manager, are the same teams that work out there that will be with you. Other additional ones, school-wise, are on the top level, independent school districts. We work small to large. And then just a handful of cities all throughout the state. And one of the other ones to note is Texas Facility Commission. It is a federal entity. They have vetted us multiple times, and we are in phase 2 of the project with them. So I just wanted to speak to our credibility. The phase 2 of their project was actually granted to us after the investigation. So everything that we do, we are completely upfront about what was going on. So the way we do all of our work is through Local Government Code 302, and essentially it is legislation that allows cities to spend money upfront to do big capital improvement projects. Cities aren't always known to have extra funds to take care of yourself. So the way that this works is legislation allows you to put out a project 20 years in the future. So if we're saying we're going to save you $100,000 a year by doing this project, over 20 years it builds up to be $2 million. You can take that $2 million today to do that project, as long as whatever we're doing gets you that $100,000 a year. And these are just round numbers. So I just want you to see how these projects are done. So they are very large capital improvement infrastructures, but it breaks down the ability to pay for it over time. Anything you want to add?
Nope, you're killing it.
So just a further definition, they are guaranteed savings projects. If we tell you we're saving you $100,000, by law, we either have to cut you a check if we don't make that, or we are saving you that money. And I believe we've only ever once had one situation where we were delayed a couple months on getting product, and yes, we compensated the city for that. So things that are outside of our control, we still have to make sure that the city is even. The city is not permitted to spend even a dollar. They have to be cash flow neutral, if not cash flow positive. And one of the things that this implies is that all of the water meter projects can work into this. So there's a brief slide. The left funnel shows you kind of how a city operates. You have X amount of water and sewer revenue. It costs a lot of money to run your city. What we do is that we are going to expand your water and sewer revenue. We want to make sure that you're capturing all of that additional water that you are putting out. And we will do what we can to shrink your maintenance and operational budget and your energy costs. And by law, every single thing that difference has to pay for not only the project, but any offset of financing and interest. So, any questions yet?
Council, any questions?
All right, keep going. So the way these large projects work is that the city basically makes all your decisions. You guys get to pick every subcontractor you want. You guys get to pick who you want to work with. We create the project as in the design. We do the project management, and we do the controls if that is one of the parts, and performance assurance. Everything else is subbed out to subcontractors, and we typically try to start in your city. You guys have plenty of people here who want to do work, so we like to give opportunities in the cities that we work. But we come in very, very lean. We're not here to bring in a team and tell you, you need to work with this group. We are here to work with who you guys prefer. Everything is vendor neutral, completely open book, so if there is a subcontractor price, we will share it with you. It goes direct to the city. And then everything follows Texas procurement law, so we do get 3 bids on every single part of our projects. So 2 months ago, I believe it was, Chip came in here, he spoke with you guys. You tasked him with seeing, hey, tell me what's going on in my city. So, over the past 2 months, our team found that there is absolutely a project here. You guys have a lot of needs on your water side. These are the 5 measures that we wanted to investigate because you are losing some money on your water system, so we want to help you guys get that back and save all the money for the city. So that was our main focus. And we'll jump into more detail. The first thing is replacing your existing water meters. They are a little obsolete. They're not reporting the way that they should. And you're using more manpower to get your water meters done than you should.
Okay, real quick question on that.
Yeah,
Can you break it down a little more simpler?
I will get to that in just a moment.
Perfect.
Second one is water distribution monitoring. We want to be able to let you guys see what's going on in your pipes underground. We want to give you the sensors and the control to basically see, hey, if something happens, because it's never happened here before, we want to get ahead of it. And by using technology, we're going to start seeing if there is a problem before it has to happen and come up to the ground. Wastewater treatment plant upgrades, there's a handful of items out there. LED light conversions in all your buildings, it'll save you a lot of money to replace all of the old fixtures. And then we have discovered that there's a substantial need for an elevated storage tank. You guys are doing a lot of building on the north side, and that is something, since we don't do change orders, doing the work now or waiting 5 years is going to be a very big cost difference. So it's going to be more beneficial for the city to get that infrastructure in ahead of time. And I'm going to kick this off to you. You can go through this.
Sure. All right, so Janet kind of briefed through all the priorities here, but I'm just trying to keep it as brief as possible here. The first priority that we're looking at is water meter conversion. So city kind of has about 45,000 meters right now.
How many?
45,000 water meters. That's commercial, industrial, residential, all combined. So the goal here for us is to modernize infrastructure. What I mean by that is, right now, you do have an AMI infrastructure, which basically means the water meter readings from the water meter goes through a collector, and then it goes through a system, so you don't really have to drive around and read the water meters. But what's happening right now is that system is starting to fail, and it's obsolete.
Of those 45K, do you have any idea which one, of those 45K, initially, is that what we started at? That program started when?
It's
2015,
2012.
2012?
Started.
So, you know, that's how old the
Installation
system
started
is.
on
Of that
12.
45K, how many are still operating?
Probably
And-
about a little less than 90%.
And so the thing is, we're doing a lot, the thing is, the staff is doing a lot of estimating on the water. Do we know what percentage?
Or they're likely, having to read them
How many
manually.
meters
I mean-
were failed last
So,
Oh, here we
so,
go.
so 45,000 meters that are online, there are about 6,000 meters that don't read right now. So it's about 39,000 approximately that
They're
read.
working.
So you have about 8 water meter readers who go around and do the roads and physically have to go to the meter and read it,
If they're getting there.
if they get there. That's true. But other than that, if you cannot reach that, you have to basically estimate how much you're,
And there's a percentage of estimation.
great.
Because the thing is that if you're short on staff, you're on vacations, calling sick, guess what's happening? Nobody's out there reading.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So goal for us is to modernize that infrastructure. As I said, this it's obsolete when these meters start to fail and basically the entire meter reading system starts to fail. There's no real way for you guys to replace what's out there right now. So you got to go in with a completely new system so that you don't have this issue. And the system is like, since this current system is obsolete, you won't get parts. So you got to go with a new system anyway. And as Jenna mentioned, it's easier to get that done now because the cost of those newer systems is going to keep going up.
So the system that City of Odessa went to in 2012, there are no available parts
That's correct.
to replace those that are down.
Yeah, those are Badger meters, and Chip can talk a little bit more about that.
And
But
there's more,
right.
The reason why I'm saying this is that there's some people out here in this community that report on this, they're a little slow on this. I just want to be able to point out the key points
Correct.
because they continue to miss it. So continue. sir.
Yeah. So that is the goal. And on top of that, what we're trying to do is to replace some of your older meters. There are larger, older meters. Those are mechanical. So you have a mechanical part that's spinning and the water flows through it. And what happens is, and Odessa has hard water in a lot of places. So it has hard water, which is filled with minerals, flow through these meters. It's going to clog the meters up, and the meters don't spin as much as supposed to.
Yes.
So what's basically happening is we're underbilling the customers, not underbilling the city customers. So what we're trying to do is what we'll do when we go to the next phase is test these water meters to see how accurate those meters are, and then we'll propose adding in, replacing those meters with solid state meters that have no moving parts. So they come with a 10-year guarantee and usually are pretty accurate for 20-year timeline, and maybe even
Yep.
more.
So are these kind of like a mag meter? They don't have the turbine?
Similar,
Or-
there's no moving parts.
Right.
So the city does, Mr. Kerr's been very forward-thinking about putting mag meters on some of the larger distribution channels, like especially like the surface water going to Ector County, there's mag meters on that. Any new large meters have been a solid state meter with no moving parts. Majority of the industry has moved toward an ultrasonic meter, very similar, it's slightly different technology, it's transit time technology within the meter, but there are no moving parts, so the manufacturers are able to guarantee the accuracy for the life of the meter, regardless of the water quality.
Yeah, well, just about every other industry is going to that now, because with those turbines and those propellers, you get any kind of trash in there, like you were saying, it gets an inaccurate reading or breaks them down. and-
Right.
And it's losing the city money.
So the technology that Chip was talking about is basically, it's not moving parts, you just have sound signals that travel through the
Right.
upstream and downstream of the water flow, and depending on how quickly they move, they measure the water flow through it. So however hard the water is, doesn't matter if you treat the water or not, it's not going to affect the accuracy of the meter. So that's part of the project. Second item there is installing distribution line pressure sensors. So the first goal for us was to investigate what was happening with the 42nd Street piping, and we just heard that CRMWD, they're already
Ignore that line item on the presentation.
so they're working on it, which is great news. But the thing to note here is water distribution system is a pressured system. Whenever you have a pressured line, there's always going to be leaks. So the goal for this project is not to eliminate leaks. These are always going to happen. The goal of the project is to identify those leaks, isolate them, and fix them quickly. So what we're looking to investigate here is to install pressure monitors and sound sensors strategically across the water distribution system. So when there's a change in pressure, we'll be able to isolate where the leak is going to happen or where the leak is potentially happening. And these sound sensors basically listen to those leaks. Those are high frequencies that usually we can't hear. These sound sensors pick those sound waves up, and they can isolate the leaks fairly quickly. So instead of us trying to investigate where the leak is coming from, we can get to that spot even before the leak is going to happen.
Let me interject something real
Yeah.
quick. So here what we've been experiencing is a number of breaks, but we're experiencing from 42nd in the upper plane,
Sure.
from 42nd Street, well, really, 42nd Street is still the lower plane, but 42nd and Yukon is where we go from lower to upper.
Mhm.
But we're experiencing that. That's an old system now. It's been highlighted how old the system is.
Right.
But let me make this key point. We're in the older system, and the further south you go into District 1, District 5, it gets older,
Great.
but yet we're not experiencing that. And so we have no idea why that's occurring. But did y'all see anything of that in your, in your assessment?
We didn't go underground, that's our next step. So, we have assessed the 42nd Street, piping, so obviously if it's getting replaced, we don't wanna get involved. But that was one of our concerns, because for us, we're seeing a lot of your issues are branching off that in certain areas. So, we wanna give you some information going forward, but we also wanna fix what we can see. So it could be some fracking issues, it could be some use of, like overuse of the road that has caused some degradation to the piping. If you guys approve us to go to the investment grade audit, that's what we're gonna investigate and find out for you.
One key point, Mayor, that I'd like to make is, it sounds like it could be the transition area, and one of the online pressure sensors will tell you are those, we call it transient waves, where, you know, when the plant starts a pump or shuts off a pump, there could be some water hammers going on that you don't necessarily see at the plant. The plant might say, let's just say, for example, 60 PSI, they shut off, it goes down to 58 and comes back up. But at that particular point in the pipe, you got a big slosh of water happening. So that might be something that could be happening. What I've noticed over many years is that the older the neighborhoods, they didn't bed the pipes properly, so there's no sand underneath the pipe. It might be, I don't know what the ground is like under Odessa, but I imagine there's rock. You've got pipes sitting on top of rock. You take that into account with these hammers, these transient waves going on. You could be moving that pipe back and forth. And I can tell you, the hill country town just north of San Antonio, we had a whole subdivision. We just had a lead crew that started there in the morning and finished, they were done at night. And that's all they did all night long, or all day long, because the plastic, in that case, the plastic was right on top of the pipe. Here you may have, they'll tell what kind of pipe materials you have. Those built in the late 60s, 70s, I'm imagining they had AC pipe and build reinforced concrete that's real brittle. And so that pipe, I like to say, you fix this leak right here, you find the next wet spot or weak spot right down the road there. So that's what these pressure sensors will help you identify, would be that. And in addition, I can't speak to the seismic activity or, you know, if there's enough cover over that pipe, that's determined by, you know, how big the pipe is and et cetera, et cetera. So.
Okay.
And then one other add-on to that is, so pressure sensor is going to help you find where the leak is, but what we also want to do is to make it easy for you guys to isolate the leak. So we have isolation valves. I'm sure you guys
You have to
already have.
manually
You have to
turn.
manually turn and
Yes.
close, so you can isolate some sections of the pipe where you have to do the work. But what we have done recently with good success is to automate them. Automate them in the sense like you can connect them to your automation system where you can basically get on your computer and then open or close it or reposition it as you want it. So you don't have to go out there and manually do it. Just click off a button, should help you isolate a position and just close the valves as needed. So that's going to be an add-on to the pressure sensor. So it's not just about monitoring or finding where the leak is, but also isolating the system so you don't lose water by the
And
time you
keep
get
the pressure up, know
keep the
what a
pressure,
water
yeah.
notice is, we can isolate that smaller, so it wouldn't have to be a large area of town if a problem was to
Or
happen.
a county.
Oh,
Got
yeah.
it. Yeah. All right.
Wastewater treatment plant, okay, I like to talk about water and wastewater, and Jenna's kid with me said if I slap you on the back, that means stop, so.
Can you explain?
I'm sorry, can y'all hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I realize I use some acronyms in there, y'all may not know what they are. So at the wastewater plant, the key thing to a wastewater plant is to get oxygen in the water and then get the water to settle to be clear to use somewhere down the road, right? So whether here it's at the golf course or at various places we send it to. So what I noticed at the plant was you have two what we call oxidation ditches, which use rotors. So these are just big wheels that spin in the ditch, okay? Just think it was an axle with a bunch of wheels on it. None of those are VFD driven, which is variable frequency drive. So what that allows you to do is turn the speed down on those motors. Instead of running at wide open, you can turn that down and let's say run it at, I don't know, 80%.
It's like a dimmer on a light before a motor.
Perfect. There you go. It's the same thing. And then in addition to that, as the plant conditions change, we're going to monitor the dissolved oxygen, put that on what we call a closed loop, kind of like a thermostat on the wall for your AC, and it will then tell the motors how fast to spin. So as that oxygen gets lower, we'll crank them up. And this is very important when you have, I call it the shoulder seasons, when you go from spring and then fall, when you get the temperature changes, oxygen does some weird things. It's more and less soluble as you get warmer and cooler. So that's the number one issue that we saw there. That's pretty low-hanging fruit in my mind to save energy costs at the
So
wastewater treatment plant.
why is that critical? Can you tell us why that's critical to be able to control those variable speeds?
So you don't want to spend more power than you need to get the oxygen levels up. So a lot of plants I see, let's say the permit level is 4 or 5, above 5. They gotta be greater than 5 or greater than 6 on the DO. They may have an 8 or 9 leaving the plant. You don't need 8 or 9. You're just wasting energy. You need,
So
you know,
we're basically is pulling in power, which is making our power,
Power
our
bill excessive.
electricity more expensive. And
correct,
so we're able to control that a little bit easier, but we have cost savings
correct,
in the thermostat. So leave the thermostat at 72 and don't touch it.
right,
Okay.
right. Exactly. Good analogy.
I think the important thing to note here is a 20% reduction in speed of those motors, which is actually very conservative, could lead up to 50% reduction in your energy.
Yep.
So it's.
Especially right now, how expensive it is.
And then the other big one we saw, there's some other minor stuff there, but I think the big money saver there is right now Odessa uses a belt filter press to dewater sludge. That's common on very large plants where you don't have the land area, and also in East Texas where we get lots of rain, kind of like we talked about piping the water over from the east to the west. Here, you know, Odessa, you don't get much drier than Odessa, I don't believe. In other parts of the state, down in the valley and down south, we use drying beds. And what the drying beds allows you to do, let the wind and the sun dry the sludge. So when you have a belt press, you're gonna get at best 20% solids, which means you have 80% water, right? That you're gonna haul to a landfill. So you're paying to haul 80% water to a landfill, having excessive disposal costs. If we can use a drying bed, let's just say we get that to 80%, flip it on its end, let's get that to 80% solids and 20% water, you just reduced your hauling costs by 60%. So
How often?
And we know
how-
trash is very expensive.
Okay, and so we're doing those transportation costs. How often are we doing those?
every day there's a load that goes to.
One
the
load?
landfill.
Have any idea how many tons?
I don't know how many tons, I didn't get into the container
Typically-
size.
Typically, those containers start at about $180 to $250 for a haul off, so depending on the tonnage. So if we were to even, math is not my thing, that's why I'm in engineering. If we were to account $200 for 300 days,
Yeah.
what is that?
I did the math, but I didn't,
And then take 20% of that, we could save you 80% of your trash bills just from
And-
the wastewater
And
treatment.
this doesn't include, this is something we have to dive in deeper to get more details on when we go through the IGA, but that does not include the staff it takes to run the belt press and to move the truck around, to take the truck to the landfill, the fuel that goes with that, the operation and maintenance and minor power costs you have with the belt filter press. So there's other savings there besides just the, what I call the tipping fees at the landfill. There's.
Now, that cost wouldn't be much of a factor if the city of Odessa owned its own landfill, but
You
since
have
it
a lot of
doesn't.
other costs with that, but because you guys pay to dispose of your trash, that's where you're saving.
And that system has been in place since the city of Odessa sold the landfill, which would be the 90s. Okay.
Likely, it's, I don't know that we know that for sure, but it's been there for a while.
And those are the main water, I think, water, outside the water tower, which, I don't know if Chip or Jenny, I want to talk about that.
We
next,
talked
but-
about the water tower last time, it's, and Jenna mentioned it earlier, the growth on the north side, the homes alone, I think there's about 2,500 homes that are either there or coming
Minimum.
there. Water pressure's gonna be an issue. As that area tends to develop and grow with businesses and schools potentially, there's gonna definitely be a need in the future for the tank. And so, it was something we looked at quickly, and we would like to further investigate it.
That elevator tower has to be done, whether it's doing now or in the future, but it's gonna have to be done.
Correct.
Any questions? Because I went into further detail on the next slides, but I think we can skip over a lot of it because we've covered all of
Okay.
it. So.
While we're on
Oh,
that, before we go there, I do want to call, I don't know if Mr. Curtis knows
Yes.
about him.
He's out of town.
Okay, he's out of town, okay.
Yeah.
It seemed a little bit doom and gloom on the wastewater plant. Y'all have an employee, Melissa Looney, that works for Mr. Kerr at the plant. She is great, he's done a great job there, with the resources they have. So it's just, it's not in disarray at
No.
all. It's very much operational. We just threw a tour and they were very gracious to take us around. Ryan was able to, him and Melissa were talking, it was English, I didn't understand a word they said, but it was, that's where we identified a couple of these things.
we just don't want you to think that we're coming in here to tell you that things are problematic. They are not. These are just additional things that can be done to help the city, but we're in no way saying that. Nothing we're seeing is worse than any other city. You guys are in a very good position as it is.
Well, we're not Jackson, Mississippi, that's for sure.
No.
Okay.
We don't talk about Jackson. One thing I want to mention on the water meters, and Chip, if you want to speak to this, is the lead and copper piping and the savings of doing that.
Yeah, we may have touched on this last time, but just to talk about it again, the EPA has come down and issued some new lead and copper rule revisions. And essentially, it's anyone that's selling water has to identify the line type on both sides of the public and private line where the meter's at by at least 6 inches, ideally also into the dwelling. Into the dwelling on the private side is going to be an issue. It's the hottest topic in the water conferences. There's one this week in Houston that we're all going to. It's very hotly debated, but all that said, I don't believe TCEQ is going to be lenient on just waiting, well, we can't go on that private side. They're going to require you to go and identify the line type on the public and private side, because you have an easement at every meter. And so when we're doing our investigation on any meters, we look at every single large meter there is, but we also, when we're doing a meter install changeout, we have the line type on both sides. We can do a scratch test, we can identify what it is. Now you have the survey to be compliant with TCEQ when that comes up in October,
This year?
October
Next year?
16th, 24.
So,
And so why it's important and noteworthy is if the city hired someone outside to come and just do that survey for them, it'd be, we're estimating 3 million. I've seen it closer to, like for you guys, about $100 a meter, so it'd be like $4.4 million. So we wouldn't look at all of that savings, but there is some savings of doing that work during an AMI changeout.
since we're already doing, if we're to do the boxes and change them out, it's
Right.
about $13 for us to do the documentation as opposed to the 100. So
So-
that's where that savings.
So that regulation is going to be coming in October of '24.
Yes.
You know, always, they always give municipalities a time, you know, to get that done. So there's a window there where it becomes mandatory. Does it become mandatory October 2024?
October 24, you'll need to have your survey complete, or at least in process. I think if you show, hey, we're doing this through a turnkey, or we've hired this person to do it, they'll probably be lenient. But if you just say, I've done these 20,000, these 24,000 are unknown, you then have to treat those 24,000 that you didn't do the survey on as leaded material. And so then you have to go and do a scratch test, do water quality test, get the samples, if there's any parts we're building, and then you have to replace 3%, as of today, 3% of that both public and private line that has any leaded material. As of today, if the homeowner says, or whoever the private line, service line owner is, if they say, no, I don't want this done, then there's some sort of letter or affidavit that removes any liability to the city, saying, look, we've at least notified you, here's an NSF filter to help filter your water. And so there are some guidelines, but all of those are mitigated in doing a project with us.
Do you have anything you want to add real quick?
No, he covered it. Good job, Chip.
All right, just jumping through this because this was already covered. So just to close up, everything we do is vendor neutral. We focus on local businesses, local organizations to work with. Everything is turnkey. If we say that these are our scope items, it does not matter what happens, whether it's an act of God, we are held accountable. We say we're replacing all your meters, but let's say we didn't count 30 of them, that's on us. It doesn't go to the owner, so you will never see a change order. And that also helps protect against inflation. We don't know what prices are going to be from now to 3 years from now, so a lot of our customers who started doing work with us in 2019 couldn't love us anymore. We do the full utility billing software integration. We also have a substantial marketing team that works with cities to make sure that we handle the customer engagement. We know your citizens are the priority, so we work with the city to make sure that they're very well aware of everything going on. Whether we're talking about a meter replacement or construction for an elevated storage tank, we curate those messages and get them out. And then, like I said, everything is guaranteed performance. So if we say we're saving you money, we either cut you a check or we save you that money plus an excess. We are very consistent. last step, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time, is that currently we just finished our preliminary utility audit. Right now, what we're asking for is your approval to move towards the investment grade audit. That is when we go out and get all of our hard numbers. We know exactly what the scope is, the dollar amount, and we work with the subcontractors to figure out everything. At this point in time, there is no commitment to work with us. There is no commitment to work with us until after the investment grade audit, if that's what the city determined that our work was something we wanted to proceed. So as of right now, moving to the investment grade audit, there is no commitment and nothing on the city to force you to be with us. So we just want you to know that. And that's all I got.
Okay. Any questions? Council, questions?
I've got one big question, because I'm not really sure I understand the financing. I understand we're gonna have savings to pay for, but how do we issue debt to cover the hard costs?
So
We pay for it with the savings, I get that part.
So we work with third-party finance companies that will issue the money up front. We work as essentially, they will hold the money in an escrow account, and then for us, they pay as we do the construction, and then you guys have that money in your funds, so you pay us when you get paid back by the savings. So there is a third-party financing, which is where that money would come.
So this goes on our books, it's off the books?
So it doesn't count on your books as a whole. So if, let's say, it's $1 million project and you do it for 10 years, it's a $100,000 payment, it would just show your annual that it sits on as the 100,000. It doesn't hit your bonding for that million.
So if it's off the books, I'm trying to figure out how, it's the accounting that's bothering me. It's off the books, and how does that impact our taxpayers?
So it
'Cause-
doesn't affect your taxpayers. This will not change any taxpayer rate, and it will not affect your bonding capability. It's not off the books. It's that it doesn't, it comes on as a tax exempt lease, so you have to vote every year to continue to be doing this project. So like I said, it'll show up as that 100,000, but it doesn't hit you guys like you did the $1 million project. So it'll show a line item in your budget of your annual payment. And I'm happy to get any more details and work.
Yeah, well, I'm just, but something's gotta secure that financing. I'm trying to figure out how you secure it.
Through the city's credit rating is how we secure the third-party loan. So that would be what we'd work there. And there's plenty of different ways that we do it. So it depends how the city wants to figure out the financing. So as we go forward, that's conversations with city manager, finance, and there's just many ways for this to go.
Is there any way you can put it down?
Yeah.
So you can distribute it so everybody can get a better understanding of that?
I really need to see that, Mayor.
No, I know that, that's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to do.
yeah.
To put-
And
put
it
down.
seems like it'd have to enter the city accounting system at some point, you know?
Yeah. What about, you got anything on line items on projects?
What do you mean?
Well, the thing is, we're going into the next phase, right? This is what you're asking.
Yeah, we're asking to go into the next phase.
Okay, so kind of explain that a little bit. What does that entail?
So that's when we go out and, so these 5 items is what we determined were your big points of lost revenue. So if this is the 5 items that you agree with, we will go out and turnkey these projects. So we will get the subcontractors lined up, we will make sure we know all the scope, and that's what we will bring back to you in a couple months.
But what he's asking, Mayor,
what
what
are
he's
those
asking
five?
is,
Those 5 are the water meters, the wastewater treatment, LED light conversion, the elevated storage tank, and then the water distribution analysis.
so what we'll do, Mayor, is we'll go through and Cy, myself, and our team of people will go through and actually dive off into the weeds, you know, get amp readings, do other stuff, test meters, and find out for sure if there's a project there. Let's just say, for instance, on the rotors in the wastewater plant. We can put VFDs on, but it's not gonna pay for itself. We may just scratch that one. We say, okay, we're not gonna do that. Or we find out it pays back a lot
And we'll bring it
more.
back to you to decide if you guys want to
So-
do it. We don't make.
So right now, you've identified potential problems, but then
Potential,
you'll,
yes.
on this next step, you'll go in and see if it's an actual problem that needs to be
If it's
addressed,
feasible.
if it's cost effective or not.
And with that letter of intent is what allows us, I guess, liability-wise for our insurance, because then we're gonna hire third-party vendors to come and because legislation states that we can't go and test those meters and come back and tell you, oh, look, we tested them and
Sure.
you're gonna get all this revenue back. No, it's gotta be a third-party vendor. They're gonna come test the meters. They do it on their AWWA rated test bench that's calibrated twice a year. They come back with some results, and those results, we're not gonna test all 44,000 meters, but it will be a statistically relevant sample of meters, as an example with the meters. And so then we'll say, okay, we have a 90% confidence that we're within 10%. Either way, you're probably better equipped to talk about that, but, so then we'll say, okay, well, we're at, 95%. Okay, well, then we say, okay, well, 95, the delta from 95 and 100 is 5%. Well, that's simple math against the water and sewer revenue, with the exception, we're not gonna take that entire 5% in that example, because the AWWA water statutes say that it's 98.5% to 101.5%, so there's a 1.5% either side of 100, if we're looking at the accuracy. So we're not gonna take that full 5% revenue, we'll say, okay, let's model the project at 3.5%, and see what this looks like. Okay. So then, if it's got a payback within that 20 years, then we add that. If the rotors or the VFDs show a payback within 10 years, and so each one of those 5 line items will come back to the council and say, okay, here's what this one's got a payback, this one's got a payback, and if something doesn't have a payback within that period, we'll either remove it, or it'll be a decision of the city and the council to say, we still think this is a good project for us, we'd like to move forward.
Can you also speak on real quick the third-party engineering review at the end?
Yeah, thank you. So in addition to the third-party testers, which we'll hire, they'll create a report. At the end of it, it's still an engineered report stamped, but it's stamped with an engineer of your choosing. Because again, we hired the third-party engineer to come and do the testing, or not engineer, no, a third-party company to do the testing. Then we'll have those tests, we'll create the project. Then we put together this water audit in this scenario. And then you're gonna decide, hey, we wanna send that to XYZ Engineering. And then we'll send that to them, and they're gonna check our math and make sure, okay, yeah, this looks good, this doesn't. They might come back with some clarification or some questions. And so we'll go back and answer whatever they have, or maybe make modifications depending on what it is. And then once that's done, they stamp it and give it to you. The 3 scenarios in that is, because it's an investment grade audit, there's maybe a little bit of skin in the game. For you guys, there's no dollars up front, right? But typically, there's 3 scenarios. One scenario is that investment grade audit does what we think it's done because we've done the preliminary work here. The city decides to move forward, whatever investment, whatever number is in there, and we don't make any money on this. So this is, if they're at hard cost, more times than not, that's something that's negotiated, and we say, okay, the city's like, okay, I'm willing to pay the $40,000 to have the testers come in. We're not even there yet. So we'll have these guys come do the testing, everything looks good, everything rolls forward into the project. The second scenario is, everything looks good, the city decides, you know what, for whatever reason, it's something that it's not the time for us. At that time, the city would pay for the project, the audit. The third scenario is, we think we do a really good job, we get up here on these 3 council meetings and tell you guys, hey, this is great, and we do the math, and it just doesn't check out. We still have to send that back, send that to the third-party auditor or engineer of your choice. They're gonna review, it's likely not gonna qualify for an energy savings contract. We eat that, you still own the report. So there's very little risk. I guess we probably should have led with that. We absorb all the risk in these early stages. But we stand up here with a high level of confidence that we've done enough work on this front end that if we're given the ability to get into the investment grade audit, that we're gonna deliver a project that will be self-funding, budget neutral, and
100% satisfaction guarantee?
100% satisfaction.
Can you briefly mention what type of work that y'all are doing with Odessa College right now?
Sai is the lead engineer for Odessa College.
Yeah, so for the college, we're basically doing HVAC replacements. So some of their rooftop units and air handling units are old. So we're working on developing a phase 2. During phase 1, we had to go in and replace all their VAV boxes, so basically all the terminal boxes in every room. So we went in and replaced that, and we did all their lighting. We did all their LED lighting, exterior and interior. Working on developing a phase 2, as I mentioned, where we're gonna do some work in their natatorium, the sports complex. So we're gonna replace their air handling units there. We're gonna replace their glasses and everything, just giving the natatorium basically a facelift. That's what we're gonna
And
do.
was this a project that was funded the same way you're talking about funding it with us, with third
Correct.
party? And
So everything that was done at Odessa College followed these
Exact same steps. Yeah.
They, everything was completed through tips. They procured us the way that we would start with you guys.
It's not an issue at OC.
No,
because
it's just an
Odessa
issue with
College.
Odessa.
It's because we're the city of Odessa.
Yeah.
And there's an issue there. That's it. That's the only difference.
Right.
You're just changing the marker. That's the only reason there was an article. And I didn't even know about the article until you just said it.
not many people do, not many people.
Well, let me ask this question. So let's go back over what we talked about. So can you get us information about the funding of how that's going to work and how that's budget neutral? To understand how the third party is and how you wind up securing the financing. Now, I know you've already stated it's through the city's bond rate,
It's not through the bond rating, it's through your credit rating.
through the credit rating, I'm sorry. You corrected me on that. And so can you give us that, give it over to the city manager? Remind me, what else that we were asking? The 5 projects that have been identified?
Yes,
And
they're in the package.
they're in the package. And is there anything else?
I've got 2 questions.
Okay, go ahead.
One, from start to finish, to do everything that you find, what kind of time frame are we talking about?
From now to when we put the project together and come back to see you?
Well, that and then the actual work.
So the work will depend on what the scope is. So it really just depends, and we'll get more information as we do this. It's like, we'll break it out, so we'll tell you what the water meter timeline is, what the elevated storage tank line. So we'll give you that as we determine the project.
On the storage tank, are you guys identifying not just the need, but the location?
We would work with a local engineering team to create the design and the location for that.
That's real critical.
Yeah.
It is.
It needs to be in the right place, or it's not
Well,
worth
to
it.
maximize the growth,
Yeah.
it's right now estimated,
Exactly.
for decades to come. I mean, we gotta lock in that cost now, because it's only gonna get more expensive. Is there anything else that we're missing that we need to ask for?
I just need to know how they're gonna get paid.
We get paid on the construction
Yes.
only.
You get paid on the construction?
Yeah, so as we build the project out and as we actually are doing the project, that's when we get paid.
So you put a percentage on top of the work?
Yes, and we're happy to share that with you. Of course, we get a percentage because that's the only way we make our money.
Well, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
Just need to know how much.
Our margins are open for
Nothing's free.
negotiation. What?
Said nothing's free.
Nothing is ever free except this because we want your work.
Yeah, I understand.
Are we gonna stick with local contractors on all of this?
If that is what you guys want to do and the city of Odessa prefers, that works well with us. There's an advantage for us since we have so much insurance and bonding capability. There can be a lot of smaller contractors that wouldn't ever be able to work with Odessa because they can't handle that. So we can always partner up and really create a big hub for you guys.
I think that would be great for us, because we need to grow outside of the oil field. We have lots of contractors that need work that get ignored, so I'm hearing it from them every day, and so the project like this would help us.
As long as they fit within our requirements, it can't just be like Joe with a truck.
No.
But anybody can bid, and we'll definitely work with you guys on that, because we do want to see Odessa thrive and bring that business here.
That's how the oil field is. You just wiped out 80% of the oil field.
I'm sorry.
That's all it
I don't
is,
know
is
if
Joe
we
with a
can
truck,
afford
come
oil
on.
field prices, though.
Yeah, we can't afford oil field.
So that's what we did with Odessa College. We worked with them, we used the local contractors to do the HVAC work.
Okay. Is there anything that we're missing?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I like the term "cut your check," and I appreciate the technology that PSI has. I was just thinking, have you conducted any independent audits verifying those historical costs, improved system efficiencies from any of your cities?
I'm sorry, say that again?
An independent
I think
audit
the answer is,
verifying.
Yes, we do an MMV report every year, and so we
Okay.
look at, we'll say, we started the project, we use the benchmark in the baseline from the investment grade audit. Here's day one, And then every year, we're doing testing.
And we can provide what we've done for other cities, so you can see the MMV reports.
That's what I was asking, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We can absolutely show you what we've done for other cities.
But this would be third party, not in-house, or is it?
So we do in-house after the project. We can
Okay.
show you the third-party
Well,
reviews as well.
Yes and no. So because we're having our third-party come test meters on the front end, we're gonna also have a third-party come test meters, 18 months after the project. So we don't want the project to get any longer in the tooth and then have it installed and say, okay, well, something's not working, we're missing some revenue, what's going on? Because we're still on the hook for that. So we're gonna hire a third party to come back out in 18 months after the project, 18 or 24 months. But we want it to be relatively close to when we turn the keys over. Now, we're not leaving, but we're turning the keys over. But 18 months after that, we're gonna bring another crew back in here and they're gonna test meters and then they'll give us the results.
Because there's hard figures, or, okay.
Yep.
And Cy typically puts it together to look as a presentation to turn over to you guys as well. So you have something professional other than just a report.
Okay, any further questions? Anything else you guys like to
Wait.
add?
So on the subcontractor side of this, do y'all already have specs and stuff wrote out about what y'all wanting done so that we can get copies of this out to the contractors now?
And we have one of our project managers, so his name is George, and he's not here today, but he typically is the one who manages getting them out. So if it's something that you want to work with him on and spread it, that would be great.
Yep. That'd be great.
Anything else? One last time. Sure. Going once.
Just
Guys, going down?
move us to the next stage.
Well, this is a discussion, so what we'll wind up doing, please get us the information.
Yep.
And then, once you get us the information, we'll wind up putting it on the agenda, and that's when we'll go forward. Okay?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it for the
Thank you.
presentation. We're gonna move on to item 5, discuss industrial district agreements 1B and 1C. President ODC is not here. Vice President Jeff Russell will be doing the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. As you know, the two industrial district agreements, 1B and 1C, which are between the City of Odessa and Grow Odessa, were actually up for renewal at the end of last year. And twice the City Council has agreed to extend those contracts, pending some further due diligence and maybe some potential modifications. And so over the last few months, we've met several times with Grow Odessa representatives, as well as the appraisal district and other people that have been involved in these agreements to see what modifications might be desirable in these agreements. And really the goal was to kind of use these as the template contract going forward, so that future agreements in industrial districts, because we understand the need for industrial districts. There are under state law, there are some types of industries and things that can't be inside of city limits, so these industrial districts kind of fill that gap, still allow city services to be extended into these districts, sometimes water, sewer, nearly always police and fire and things like that. So there's a need for these industrial districts. And we just kind of wanted to see how we tighten up the agreement so that they're most beneficial to all the parties involved. So I believe you guys in the past have been provided copies of the existing agreements, and I wanted to go over today just a few of the proposed changes in the agreements, because there have been some changes in city operations since the agreements were last renewed. But do you guys have a copy of these, of the old one, or?
No, it wasn't.
Okay, well, I'll hit these
Go ahead.
fairly quickly. In section 3, the industrial districts, any properties that built in those industrial districts under the old contract were subject to existing City of Odessa building codes and things like that, regular permitting process, and all. The one thing that they weren't subject to were impact fees, because at the time that they were last renewed, we didn't have impact fees. And so in section 301,
we would propose adding in the inclusion of the impact fees to the agreement. So basically, any properties that were improved inside the industrial districts would be subject to all the requirements that they would be as though they were inside the city limits. So any building codes, impact fees, permitting fees, and everything, since they're getting benefit of all the city services, they'd be subject to all the requirements that somebody inside the city would be subject to. So that would be just the inclusion of impact fees. In Article 4, so instead of paying quote-unquote property taxes, and the industrial district properties pay a payment in lieu of taxes. And in the past, this in these particular two cases of Grow Odessa's properties, one of the things that was exempted, the properties that were exempted from paying the payment in lieu of taxes, were any of the properties that were still owned by Grow Odessa. In other words, they hadn't been sold by Grow Odessa to XYZ oil field company or whatever to be improved. And we've had some fairly extensive conversations with them about that because, as you guys know, the city's always in need of revenue, and we're always, and I think the desire that this council has voiced is to kind of level the playing field and make sure everybody's treated as fairly and equally as possible. So one of the proposed changes would be to strike Section 401, subsection D, so that even the properties owned by Grow Odessa, they would still be subject to the payment in lieu of taxes based upon their current assessed market value.
That was section 401?
Yeah, subsection D.
Subsection D.
So 401D, we would strike that. So even if Grow Odessa still owns the property, it would still be subject to payment in lieu of tax equal to the amount that they'd pay on city tax.
Let me ask a question. So what does that mean, instead of property tax in lieu of?
Okay,
Can you explain that?
so yeah, we can't, since they're technically not a part of the city, you can't assess them quote-unquote city property tax. So my house is in the city limits, so I pay, county, school, OC district, and all those things, including city tax. These properties are not technically inside the city, so what the agreement was, in exchange for extending those city services into the district, then they paid an amount equal to the amount of property tax they would have paid had they been in the city.
Does that run through the appraisal district?
It does, and it's a little awkward right now the way that it's done, and we've talked to Lane Young and the folks over at the appraisal district about how we make it easier. We could treat it, and I think we need to have some further discussions with them to help streamline how this is done. They currently go through kind of a separate invoicing process to invoice that amount to each person in an industrial district.
Can you explain how that's done?
It's very cumbersome.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very cumbersome the way they do it. They actually hire a third-party contractor to help them prepare the invoices, and they look at the property values that are assessed by the appraisal district, and then separate invoices go out and have to be collected and all that.
No, hold on then.
Yeah, it's cumbersome, to say the least. We have a lady that was here, but I think she's in Waco, so she goes out, prepares the invoices, and then tries to collect, and does her best to collect this. So it's really odd.
So who's contracted, and who has a contract with this individual?
The city of Odessa, apparently.
So the city of Odessa is contracting a third party
Yes, to
collect
on
on payments, but not property taxes
Well-
within the industrial districts?
Right, no, we'll collect on payments for the IDAs. Of course, we can't get property taxes since they're outside the city, but the fees in lieu of taxes is what we contract with her on to actually go and collect the payments.
So let me ask this question.
It's a mess.
What's the legality on this? Because, I mean, we all own houses here.
Yep.
None of us have a third party representing us. The city of Odessa is in contract with the third party and has an arrangement with these districts and those within the districts and Grow Odessa to make payments. So help me understand.
So basically, the lady acts as a collection agency, if
Okay.
that makes any sense. She basically goes out to the IDAs, the people that have these companies with IDAs, and says, okay, you owe X amount this year, be in lieu of taxes, pay up. Sometimes she's successful, sometimes not, so.
And I believe those payments come directly to the city, right? They don't go to the appraisal district, they come to the city.
But if she goes for us and collects them, and it's really cumbersome, why we're not doing it, so why the billing and collections not.
So do we have a contract in the existence to this day, the city of Odessa?
I don't, if we have a contract with her, I don't recall ever seeing it.
How does the system exist, and how's it continue to be
Lord,
supported?
Lord, Mayor, that was before my time, I would hate to dare guess.
I think the important part there is there's an opportunity just to bring this more into our normal billing through the appraisal district and let the appraisal district handle it like they do every other.
I got a question. Is this land surrounded by the city of Odessa? Technically, this would be in the city of Odessa had we not just made this an industrial district. Is it not
Mr.
surrounded?
There's some history behind that. This is the old Odessa Industrial District, section of the city that was formed back in 1970.
Back
No, I don't
a
know.
ways.
I was on the board. I mean, so it's all the property south of Highway 80, south where Standard Sales is, where all those companies are. I guess what's distressing me is that we're sending somebody out to collect money from Frank Dedrick and from Glazier and for the Forest Brothers, because that's where their operation is. They have a lot of property down there. And so that kind of bothers me that we have somebody going out and saying, hey, Mark, damn taxes.
Well, I don't think
I
she's
think that's
actually-
not user-friendly.
I don't think she's actually doing that.
I don't-
What I'm saying,
well,
the payments
I don't
go
think
to
it's,
the-
and
go
that,
to the
and that kind of
payment.
brings us to another point in
I was
here.
always under the impression that went to the appraisal.
It does.
And then back into us.
You think they're being muscled?
Well, I just, it smells like that.
This, to meet this standard though, they have to have something that can't come into the city limits. So I don't see anything out there. Well, the beer's okay, cause it comes into the city limits. Everybody that's got a business out there has not got anything that is bad for the city. But yet they have to
they're-
meet that qualification to stay outside of the city limits. That makes no sense to me.
Well, I think there are some, and I don't know if there's any in BNC, but in other industrial districts, there are some things that could not come into the city limits. Champion Chemical would be an example of it.
Yeah,
You can't
there are
have a-
there are some valid reasons for keeping an industrial district, the city limits. It's, has to do with the regulations with TCEQ, like he was saying, like chemical companies would have a lot more difficult time, if even possible. So those reasons are valid. I mean, there's an old plant on the south side that wants this industrial district because of the TCEQ regulations. It just, and then plus also with the whole county assistant district, we can't annex anything right now, outside, and that's not in our district right now. It's not in the city limits too, so this is a way to, still receive some of those property taxes in the lieu,
And it was recruiting, diversification, economic development is where that whole district was designed. I mean,
Yeah.
and so, and
There's some
we didn't sell much
advantages.
property for a long time, I can tell you that.
Okay,
It
so-
didn't happen.
So
But,
the
yeah,
suggestion is the third-party billing and contract and bringing it back to the appraisal district for him to control and streamline.
Yeah, that would be outside what we're talking about today in the terms of this contract, but I think that's something that we need to continue to work with the appraisal district on. The city needs to continue to work with the appraisal district on how to streamline that. It just seems like over the years, it just kind of grew into a very cumbersome process that could be easily brought back into the normal flow. To address maybe Mr. Haney's question or comment, you know, I think from the city standpoint, as long as you guys are getting the same amount of tax revenue that you would as though it were inside the city limits, to maintain the benefits, some of the other benefits of industrial districts, it kind of makes sense to keep doing that. I know there's another one in discussion right now about the old Maripol Simpol property. because they want to bring that into an industrial district. So to me, it's kind of a, it's kind of a wash, because as long as we're getting the taxes collected that should be, it's good for everybody.
Okay. And I think that's the whole point. As long as we're collecting equal to what
Yes.
we would have collected by annexing them, then I think that's the way it's always been. And-
Yeah. Another proposed change would be in section 4.02, and this has to go to, again, the collection process. Currently, they're in the current agreement, and fortunately, according to the appraisal district, it hasn't been an issue, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't become an issue. There's a little bit of teeth added to this in case someone doesn't pay their payment in lieu of taxes. So currently, right now, they don't pay it, there's nothing the city can do to really kind of collect it, except keep beating on their door.
What about a transfer of property? Would that also be an issue?
Well, not the way that it is right now, because it doesn't create a lien. What we're proposing is to add language in here that would actually create a lien on the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it's got a little teeth to it. So you don't pay your property tax, you get a lien filed on your property, gives us more enforcements, because eventually you can foreclose on the lien if it came to that, or as the mayor suggested, the property changes hands, that lien's there and it's gotta be dealt with before the new owner will take title to it. So that would be a proposed change in section 402. This is more of a question than a change. Currently, these two agreements have been running for 5-year terms. And, there was some question as, does the city council want to keep it at 5 years and bring them up for renewal every 5 years? Or based upon the fact that we're going to get full property tax collection that we should in there, and we've changed a few other things, do you want to extend them for 10 years or whatever time period you want? So that's just a comment. Really, that's really up to you guys if you want to keep the 5-year current term or if you want to extend it. There's also in Article 9 under assignment, this again goes back to the enforcement mechanism. Dan has proposed a couple changes here to just, again, give the city the ability to file those liens if property taxes are not paid. And it's important to note too that these go, even though this agreement is between the city and Grow Odessa, the language of it, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, the language extends to any subsequent owner of the land in that district. So it flows through the land, even though the agreement is actually with Grow Odessa or OIDC. So it continues to follow no matter who comes in and is the subsequent owner of it. Yeah.
Can we add wording to do that? Just add the wording in there for anybody that's under this district? Just put it in there?
It's in there. It's already in there.
there?
Yeah, it's already in there.
Sorry.
It just follows the land, whoever owns it, or whoever's
Yeah.
got the
So the agreement stays in place no matter what the subsequent owners may be. But those are the proposed changes that we would like to present to the council for consideration in these. And Dan's got marked up copies that he can distribute.
And Mayor, all I want is just a consensus to go forward, and I know the 30th of April is when the second 60-day extension runs out, and we'll have it on a couple weeks from now.
Okay.
We'll be ready to rock and
I
roll.
say we need to vote on the 25th and move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any,
I guess that's the consensus right there,
Yeah.
there's one.
And we'll have it ready, and we just put it on the consent agenda.
Okay, I see you. I guess you want to come on over, introduce yourself for the record. And I'm recognize you, sir.
Yep. Eddie Shelton, Chris Terry, we're with Grow Odessa.
Okay.
I just wanted to,
Go ahead.
yeah, we just wanted to approach you guys and see if you have any questions from our perspective of it. Our perspective is we're a developer, and we develop the land in these industrial districts. We haven't developed some land that's already within the city limits. Standard Cells and Forest Brothers, those are within the city limits. We pay taxes on those lands. The two industrial district contracts, one is for 191 acres, which is where Glazers is located, and going west along Trunk Street, kind of that area. And the other one is just south of 20. The one south of 20 is almost all developed. The 191 acres, we still have several lots that we are working to sell. As far as being treated on the equal playing field, and specifically on 4.01D, which is the exemption for us to make the payment in lieu of taxes for undeveloped land. All other industrial district contracts in the city have that provision in it. So all previous developers have been treated the same way. And so this, to me, in my mind, changing this would send a message to future developers that we intend to charge them this fee if they are to work on developing land for industrial purposes.
Explain that further. I don't understand what you're
So
saying.
if we were,
No, no, I know,
Okay,
I know, let him explain it.
Gotcha.
So
Thank you, sir, I appreciate it.
it's like an incentive to have developers develop land for industry and bring companies in. We're a nonprofit organization, and what we do is try to grow the Odessa tax base by bringing in these companies and selling this land. And as, not really an incentive, but it helps it
So when you sell the land, where does that money go?
to us.
Okay, but you're nonprofit.
Correct.
Okay, so you do realize that the city of Odessa has struggled, and, to the point that every time that it's always talked about, our ad valorem doesn't seem to grow, because we wind up giving all these incentives. We're trying to find a way to have an input of money. We're not trying to sit there and say, you as a developer don't develop. Grow Odessa is the OIDC, and so that's still the corporation.
Correct.
Been out here for decades. And so you have been very good at doing what you do. But we're also the city's cash strap. And that's what when we mean we're trying to level the playing field, it's trying to help us because we have a lot of bills to pay. We provide services, even to Grow Odessa. That wind up getting services once they do. Don't give me that look. Once you transfer and you have those businesses there, you're receiving services, all right? Don't get mixed into the weeds. These discussions have already been had. And so the thing is that what we're trying here to do is trying to level the playing field for the citizens to be able, for us, because the city of Odessa is a service. We provide services. One is fire, one is police, sewer, and water. I mean, I'm preaching to the congregation here, and you know this. All we're trying to do is define what we need to do as a city to become solvent here, and we're asking for help. We're not here to punish you. We're not here to set you aside and make you an example. And no one's attacking anybody. We're just trying to find means to be able to help us as a developer. And you have been a very good partner for decades and decades. This organization existed way before I was even born. And so I have a lot of, institutional knowledge about this organization. They've done a lot of good work. But we're at a point in the city of Odessa where we have to start being accountable. And we have to, because we are landlocked because of the Texas Assistant District. And we haven't moved forward whether we're going to have an agreement or not. So we have to move forward with our urban planning, short-term and long-term, of how we're going to address those income shortfalls for the city. I thought these were basically, so are you protesting these agreements or just one particular?
The agreement I was presented with had one change and one change only.
Okay.
And that was the addition of the impact fee in section 3.01.
So the rest of this is completely new?
All the other changes that Mr. Russell.
You've never discussed any of these changes?
We have
You've
had
never been part of the
discussions,
discussion?
but as of this morning, the most recent agreement I received had one change, and that was to 3.01.
Okay.
Some of the other changes that Mr. Russell spoke about were already present within the original agreement. The lien, the language on the running with the land, things like that. All that language is identical. The one change that is different is 4.01D.
So you're protesting it or you agree with it?
Can I speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, so really, it will impact all industrial districts, not just grow Odessa. So our goal is to grow Odessa. And through industrial districts, we're able to get developers to come in and set up and develop industrial districts that will create businesses to come to town, increase the ad valorem taxes. And so as we've sat on land for a long time, right, and we're starting to get it to move, you know, this is not gonna impact us too bad because, you know, our land is moving. But it's gonna impact future developers coming in town trying to set up, and they have this grand idea, and they're gonna buy all this land, and once they plat it, well, now they're gonna have to pay a fee in lieu of taxes on all this land. So that land that's sitting there undeveloped is gonna tax them annually.
So you're basically saying you should not, impact fees you shouldn't be paying?
We don't pay impact.
No, no,
With
the
We don't pay
impact fee
fees.
is an ordinance, and we go by the ordinances. It's not the impact fee that we're talking about, it's the fee in lieu of taxes that this is in here.
So currently, right now, when Grow Odessa owns the property, y'all aren't paying that pilot, right?
Any property within the industrial district, we do not pay any payment in lieu of taxes for the city.
If it's not developed, if
Yes,
it's just raw
Correct,
land,
correct.
right?
Just until it's sold. Once y'all sell it, then the company, the person, the individual who buys that starts paying that pilot.
That's correct.
Yes.
But the thing is though, since it doesn't go to the appraisal district, and then they start making payments instead of through the appraisal district to this third party, there's no lien capabilities.
I'm not aware of, there are lien capabilities in the existing agreement.
How? It's through a third party. What power do they have
I'm not
in
aware
the
of what
appraisal
third party
district?
we're speaking about.
Okay.
We're not involved in any of that part.
Okay.
That's appraisal district
That's
of
right,
the
you
city.
say you didn't know, you have any knowledge of it. So basically, is just the fee is what you're protesting? Because you're not concerned about Grow Odessa, but future developers that are coming in, that they would have to start paying and it would deter them from developing. Did I get that right?
Well, we are concerned about Grow Odessa as well, but in the bigger picture, we are concerned about the future development of industrial districts.
Yeah, so,
But
can I,
because
Eddie, I'm just
Go ahead.
ask a question. So what I think, Mayor, if I can simplify this, they would have, with this agreement, with this change, they're gonna have to pay a fee in lieu of taxes on vacant land until they sell it, which is gonna increase the value they have to charge for the land to recover what they're having to pay taxes on until it develops. And that land has taken a long time to sell and still not complete, but it's now it's starting to go. And they're saying, I think, not trying to put words in your mouth, but to me, it seems like what you're trying to do is trying to keep from having to charge any more for the land than the fair market value, because if it takes 10 more years, that's 10 more years of taxes, means you gotta get more for the land. Is that in a nutshell
That's true.
what I'm hearing?
I get it.
Yeah.
I got it. You got it first.
And any future development that
Yeah.
you go and create an industrial district, you may sell that first lot, the next 20 may sit there for 10 years.
But
And at that point, that 10 years, it's just gonna go up and up and up and up to where it's unsellable.
So.
But
that's
any
all.
other developer that owns land in the city of Odessa right now has to pay the taxes on that property, even if it doesn't sell in 10 years. They have that property, they're still paying the property tax on that, correct?
So that is correct, and that's within the city. And this is outside the city, and we do pay county taxes, school district taxes, Odessa College, Medical Center.
So you're
all
paying
those
all the other
taxes.
tax entities except for the city?
Correct.
This is only, this is it, only the city has this arrangement. And so, it's been like this for decades. Anything else you guys would like to add on this?
No, I
Have
believe
y'all
that's it.
petitioned the other tax entities to not have to pay their part of the taxes? Would they agree on that also, or?
Well, we're within their jurisdiction, so I don't think we would do that.
Yes.
Yes, I know that, but hey, we're doing a pilot right now, we're a payment in lieu of taxes. Would they be, I'm just saying, that's what kind of gets me, is that we're getting the short end of the stick on this deal.
I don't know it's a give and take. The payment in lieu of taxes is for the agreement not to annex. So there's give and take there. So if we were to approach another taxing district and there's some give and take, then perhaps, but I don't see that.
But isn't the trade-off also that even though you're not annexed, we're still providing services?
Not to grow Odessa, because we don't require any services on our raw land.
Okay.
The people who buy, the companies who buy that property, once they buy the property, they go to the city, they request services, and then they start paying those fees.
So you said something, that the fee is in lieu of annexation.
Correct.
So you provide, so the arrangement for the payment was for a conditional promise that the city would never annex?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Okay, you said that the payment is in lieu of no annexation.
Correct.
So the agreement between Grow Odessa and the city of Odessa, that they would do a payment in lieu that the city would never annex it. Is that correct?
That's what the agreement says, yes.
When did that agreement take place, and do we have a document where we could read that and get that?
It's in the agreement in front of you.
Okay, so when,
Section 4.01 says, as payment in lieu of annexation, company shall make payment to city equal to taxes that would have been paid had the site been located within the city. And then it goes on to the 4 exceptions. Letter D is the exception, property which has not been sold or leased by OIDC.
okay, and so that agreement was from the original get-go?
That's from the original, that's in with all the
That's
agreements.
back in 72?
Or before 72, I mean,
The most recent one's from 2019, I believe.
Yeah, but
But
they'll
it's
continue
just
to-
renewals of each one.
Renewals, right? So
Yes,
they're-
sir.
But it goes back at least to 72, yeah, is that?
And that's not unique to Grow Odessa, that's
OIDC.
all the, no, it's all the industrial district agreements. That's the one with,
Do you have evidence of that to prove that?
sure,
No, we're talking about the other industrial districts.
sure.
How many industrial districts have that same agreement?
I don't know, I haven't looked through all of them. I pulled a couple,
So you pulled the ones that you found?
I pulled several of them.
Okay, how many?
I've got 2, I've got Nowco Champion X, I've got Arco Chevron.
Are all those up for renewal?
I do not know
Or
the
those
answer
are the
to
ones that
that.
are coming up in the future?
They're probably coming up in the future.
Okay, then.
This
then-
was 2019,
So the thing is, those are not into discussion right now because they're up for renewal.
Correct.
And they're not expired.
correct,
The ones that right now they're expired are the ones that we're discussing.
yes.
And and we can't deal with those until they expire. So we can introduce them, but let's just have everything on the table is that they probably have that agreement and they're in place, but since they're still ongoing and they're active, we can't, we're
Right.
locked into that contract. And
Sure.
so, the 2 that we're talking about are the ones that are here on the table right now. Do we have anything else we want to add on this, guys?
Mayor, we need to know how many years? 5 years, 10 years?
Yes, so,
I have something else on this.
go ahead, Mr. Haney.
Because he started naming all of these individual companies and all of this stuff. That's great. Why can't we just keep it with the individual companies and not all the ones that don't have anything that's gonna hurt the city? All of this stuff, this whole district is just sitting here to be annexed into the city. It needs to be into the city. Not controlled by a handful of people. And this is what this is. This is a handful of people controlling part of this city and telling us that we can't collect taxes, we can't do anything on this land. Enough's enough.
Understand, Councilman, but the discussion here is just the districts. And the criteria that was presented here for adding and eliminating. So we have about 6 items, correct? More or less, Article 9, 7, and things of that nature.
I still need a term.
So right now, Mr. Russell, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just a couple things to add maybe. There is language in the existing contract to address some of the questions that should the contract not be renewed, that these 2 properties that constitute these 2 industrial districts can be annexed into the city without any protest on the behalf of Grow Odessa. So the annexation option is there,
And that's basically for any of the districts that exist.
well, I don't know, I've thumbed through the other industrial districts, but we were really focused on B and C, because those are the ones under consideration right now.
Consideration right now.
In the B and C contracts, there is language in there that says that if the agreements are not renewed, they can be immediately, I forget the exact language, but basically immediately subject to annexation without protest by Grow Odessa.
Well, I think we established that there's an importance of why we need to keep the industrial districts for the reason of what's in them. And we don't want some of
In
those,
them or potentially could be.
potentially could be, and which basically would hinder the development and the recruitment of development of companies that be going into districts. We don't want to do that. We don't want to limit and pigeonhole that.
And also, Mayor, just remember, we have never, as far as I know, Dan, you probably correct me, I don't think we've ever annexed anything that we haven't been asked to annex.
Yeah, true.
This would be contrary to that.
It would be.
And that, I've got a problem with that.
And we've always held that we're not gonna
Do that.
force that annexation.
Right.
It's always gonna be on a volunteer basis.
Right.
So we have, so right now what we have to do is consider the terms.
The other point I would make,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, there are city services in there. From our understanding, city maintains the roads in there. There is water and sewer in one of the districts. There's water into the other district that's
Yep.
provided by the city. The city does provide police and fire coverage into those industrial districts. So even, if you carry it to the far edge, if the grass catches fire out there on
We'll respond.
undeveloped land,
We're gonna
or
respond.
murder occurs or whatever happens.
We're gonna respond.
The city's gonna respond
Yeah.
to it.
Right.
And also by having the presence of city water and other services there, that should enhance the value of the property.
It is.
As well over, as opposed to just a strictly undeveloped tract of land.
But the other point is, to your point, Jeff, is that we are gonna be collecting impact fees, and it only be spent in that area. So that means that takes care of your roads and your other infrastructure.
It helps.
Sure, I'm just saying, because we're not collecting it now. So we do have one avenue to collect additional revenue. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully.
Okay, so council, I think the tradition has been, is
minimum is
5
5.
years, minimum 5 years. Do we want to continue with the 5 years or the 10?
Well, if we get everything, can we increase it to 10? That way they won't come up so often.
Yeah, I like
Gives
that.
it more longevity.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have,
10's good.
Mrs. Thompson?
Give it 10.
Will be 10 years. Everybody's fine with the changes as presented? Any exceptions?
I'm not really in favor of having them pay a fee in lieu of taxes, but that's just me.
Councilman Swanner?
It's gonna drive the price of the land up.
I'm good with the way it is.
I'm good.
Okay, we'll move on with the changes as presented. Gentlemen, anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to item 6. Discuss requesting the council's approval to accept State of Texas grant funds via SB 8 Emergency Medical Services. Mr. Chavez. That's not Mr. Chavez. Mr. Ritchie. You lost your tan, Chavez.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Councilmen and women. I will be standing in for Chief Chavez this afternoon. He's currently out of town. So Odessa Fire Rescue would like to take advantage of Senate Bill 8 to absorb some of the cost associated with paramedic and EMT training. So what this is, it's a program that's going to give us up to $8,000 per student for paramedic tuition and $2,000 per student for EMT tuition. Chief Chavez has been working with the finance team, and he's requesting to create fiscal year 23 JRAC grant accounts. With the council approval, Odessa Fire Rescue will accept a total of $71,550 to send 9 students through paramedic training for this 2023 spring session.
That's great.
Thank you.
Hey, well, let me ask a quick question. How'd you find this?
How did I find this?
How did Chavez find
Chief
it?
Chavez set it on my desk yesterday before he left town. And he said, hey,
need
I
you there on
forgot.
Tuesday.
Yes. He said, hey, I forgot, so.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
for that presentation. Now, a state mandate from the legislature with money.
That's unusual.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item 7, remove from the table a presentation of the sports complex development. So I will entertain a motion to remove item 7 from the table.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Mata, second by Councilmember Thompson. All in favor indicating by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicating by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 7 is off the table. Now we will consider and hear a presentation on the sports complex development feasibility study, findings and recommendations. Mr. Chrisman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I would like to introduce Jason Boudry. He is our consultant with Synergy Sports Global. He present the feasibility study, the findings that he did with the survey and everything. He's going to go through that through his presentation now.
Hey, Mayor, Council, good to see you guys again. Hope you've all been well. Sorry for a couple of weeks ago. Some stuff beyond my control kept me from being here, but I'm glad to be here today. Prior to the scheduled meeting from a couple weeks ago, I emailed each of you a completed feasibility study. I can't remember now, but 150 or so pages. And so today just wanted to walk through kind of the executive summary of that, what our findings showed, what our recommendations are, and then what some next steps are, and then happy to answer any questions you have afterwards. So from a very high level, right, it was found through our study that the different circumference radius circles that we look at were all viable for the development of a sports complex in Odessa. As long as it's appropriately built and appropriately located, it would not have difficulty in sustaining its own operations. And through the course of this, we looked at the 30-mile radius, a 60-mile radius, 120-mile radius, and beyond 120 miles. And those are unique demographics for what they would bring to a sports facility, from your local kids to your occasional users to your infrequent users to those that just come once or twice a year for large tournaments. And so, we looked at those different population circles, and then we looked at the inclusion of an outdoor component to enhance an indoor component. And so what we found through our process, the first thing we did is send out a survey. Several of you participated in the community sessions that we had at a couple of the rec centers. When the survey finally closed, there were over 3,000 responses. I think it tipped at like 3,150. Most of the results didn't change from those, statistically from the community event nights. As you can see on your presentation, most of the respondents came from districts 2 and 4, and the interest in where this would be located also fell within district 2 or 4. A couple of the highlights on the programming. Non-sport amenities was of low importance, so things not related to sports, activities, arts and crafts rooms. We had thrown out laser tag and things like that for indoors. The top results were basketball courts, volleyball courts, indoor turf, baseball fields, and indoor batting cages. As far as location, part of the scope of our work was to look at potential areas and then drill down to potential sites. I quickly revised this after a meeting we had this morning to include a 5th site. And so when we looked at different areas of town, we looked at them based on a number of criteria. One was the location as it relates to current population, and then as it relates to future population growth trends, development patterns, city-owned versus privately owned, infrastructure, demographics, and then the proximity of retail and supporting amenities. So things like hotels, restaurants, access to major thoroughfares, that sort of thing. And so listed are the 5 sites that we looked at. 2 are city-owned, or 1 is city-owned, a couple are partially city-owned, and then a couple are completely private. And so we outlined in this report, or in this executive summary and in the final report, the pros and cons of each of those, as well as our recommendation on a ranking of those sites. And so what we determined, going through our study, was a facility needs to be efficiently built to maximize a flexible layout, and so it maximizes functionality. You don't want to duplicate spaces that you don't need to. The ideal facility has a minimum of 6 regulation-sized basketball courts, which can then double for a multitude of other sport assets, volleyball courts, pickleball courts, futsal, indoor turf, and then, in its entirety can double as convention space, trade show space, corporate event space, and other community space that's not necessarily sport related. It also, with that size of a facility, it also allows you to evolve into other sports, indoor track and field, indoor turf, that you don't necessarily have to build additional space for. We looked at the role of ice sports, hockey, figure skating, and ancillary sports. There is a place for those sports in a potential sports facility if it's creatively done. However, it is not our recommendation that it's done in the first phase. None of the operating models that we were able to model showed profitability of the sports complex with the inclusion of ice sports in the first phase. And we'll get into that in a minute. The overall goal of this was to show that a sports complex could be built and operated profitably with positive cash flow, without raising taxes and without issuing bonds. And through our study, we were able to show that. When it comes to outdoor fields, the ideal mix in the first phase would be 4 baseball fields, as well as 4 regulation soccer fields. It gives you the most flexibility and diversity, right? So a baseball field can also be a softball field. It can also be a t-ball field. A soccer field can also be a field hockey field. It can be a rugby field, and that sort of thing. There's no need or purpose or reason to overbuild just because people want it if you can't afford it. And that's really the long and short of it. And so we went through several iterations of designs, and we'll talk a little bit about each one of them. So from the smallest design, it has the least functionality. It has the least ability to generate economic impact through outside visitors. This would be your traditional rec center in today's age, right? So four basketball courts, some support spaces, a couple of offices, and that's really it. This would not really draw any tournaments other than local tournaments. It would help Parks and Rec develop a more robust Park and Rec program. It would give Parks and Rec or the city the ability to rent these spaces to some of the associations, but that's going to be really all that you would be able to do with it. It obviously has the lowest price tag of around $9 million. It is profitable. It is cash flow positive. It averages about $300,000, $250,000 in profit per year. It is profitable in year 1. It is cash flow positive from the beginning. The reason that this, and what ultimately is our recommendation, the reason that these are able to be cash flow positive from the outset is the development timeline, right? From the time that we collectively say go, there's roughly 18 months to program this facility before the doors open. And so you've got a fairly long runway to be able to ramp up your operations. An alternate to a design 1 or an option 1 is 6 basketball courts. As you can see, this is a component is laid over the top of it. This is indoor track. It is just a thing, so it can be purchased later, but you have the facility pre-built to house it if you choose to do it. If you choose not to do it, that's fine. You still have 6 basketball courts available. Now you're able to host larger tournaments. You're more of a regional draw. You cater to outside populations coming into the city rather than just churning your current city population that would come to a more of a rec center.
And that would also be like 12 volleyball courts too.
This would be 12 volleyball courts. You can see them laid out crosswise on the court, on the basketball courts. We didn't get into laying down pickleball lines and all that stuff, and it gets messy. But yes, 12 volleyball courts for a 6-court facility. From benchmark numbers, when you start looking at tournaments, for measuring about a volleyball tournament, 12 volleyball teams is assigned to a single court for the purposes of a tournament. So this would be roughly a 144-team tournament. For basketball, it's about 8 teams, right? So this would be about a 50-team basketball tournament. So this cost is about $14 million. So by increasing your footprint from, by 15,000 square feet, you add about $4 million in cost. That same option, a little bit different layout. This shows in grayed out how 2 ice rinks could be bolted on in the future, right? So the support spaces that are at the top, the entrance, the lobby, some of the locker rooms, the administrative offices, can be set up now to accommodate hockey down the road. If it gets built, it gets built. If it doesn't, it's still a fine functioning facility as it is. Same thing, right? So this is back to the 6-court layout, a little bit bigger footprint. Now you're up to $30 million. The track can be purchased at a later date. Hockey can be done later. This $30 million is assuming you do it all at the same time. Ice only is roughly $18 million. And then you can see how, and I don't know if I can go back and forth, the support spaces now that are at the bottom of the ice rinks are the same support spaces that are at the top of the basketball and track facility. So this gives you the flexibility to put the infrastructure in now and put those 2 pieces on later. So we looked at another model from a finance standpoint as far as operations, right? So this is taking that smallest rec center model of 4 courts, building the 2 sheets of ice along with it, right, for a total build cost of about $25 million. It gives you the 4 basketball courts, 8 volleyball courts, 2 sheets of ice, and the support spaces in between. But what, do you have a question? But what we wanted to find out was, what does that do to the financials? And so this kind of, reinforces my point from earlier. The inclusion of ice, you lose about $2 million, $2.5 million over the first 5 years by the incorporation of ice. And so if I rewound this all the way back to the financial statements for just the indoor court facility, you were making roughly $250,000 per year. And so, again, that's not to say that it can't ever be done. I think there's enough of a market out there to eventually get there. There's not enough of a market now to support the daily ins and outs of supporting the operating expenses of ICE. Even through public skate, these facilities can't live and die on weekend tournaments, right? The question that these facilities have to answer is, how do you make money at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday? Point blank. So then we incorporated fields into a generic site plan. This is no particular plan or no particular site. This is just a big green square. But it shows the layout of how this could be positioned. This includes just the alternate option with the 6 basketball courts. It's got roughly 700 parking spaces, the 4 diamonds at the top, and then the 4 flat fields on the right. Again, you can have the baseball fields, temporary fences, can be t-ball fields, little league fields, softball fields. These are modeled as grass fields right now. There is a conversation about turf versus grass that we can get into. There's pros and cons of both economically and playability-wise. And then there's also has been some emerging concern from municipalities who have turf on the long-term health of athletes who play on turf with the rubber pellets and things like that. So adding the field component would add about $10 million to whichever option is ultimately decided on for the indoor facility.
But how much does each soccer field, each multi-purpose field cost to build one?
Yeah, so again, it's turf versus grass, right? Turf fields,
With grass.
yeah, turf fields are about $1 million apiece. Grass fields are 300 to 500,000. You have not only your true field expense, you've got land development costs, you've got amenities, right? The walkways between the fields, you've got a field house, batting cages, those sorts of things. We did include kids' play areas, playgrounds, you know, for little Johnny, little Susie to do something while big brother, big sister's playing. And then it gives you some area up there to the top left above number 8 for future growth and expansion. The thing, I mean, you guys made a good point about Odessa's landlocked. You don't want to only get enough land for what you need now. Gets, you know, to where you can either expand the indoor facility or expand the outdoor component. And so this is incorporating the fields into that smallest rec center option. This is the financial impact of it. So now we move up a little bit. This, you know, you're at about $500,000 a year in net income or profit. This includes it's called interest expense on this, but this includes a lease expense. And we can talk about funding models later, but a leaseback concept is a public-private partnership concept that we've discussed, whereby a private entity, the private side would come in with the capital to build this and then lease it back to the city as a lease payment, as an operating management lease. And so all of that is factored in when we ran the financials. So it's not like we're saying, well, yeah, you can afford it until you have to pay for it.
Exactly.
And so then we come to the recommended facility, right? The 6-court facility with the ability to drop in those other components and the fields, right? So right now you're averaging closer to $800,000 per year in net income, profit margins in the mid-20s. Cash flow positive, obviously, from day one. It gives you the ability to expand later on. It gives you the ability to host sub-regional and regional tournaments. And I think it needs to be brought up, right? The announcement by Midland to do their own sports project came out last week. There's more than enough toys in the sandbox for everybody to play nice. There's more than enough kids for both facilities to be built, and there's partnership opportunities to even expand on what you can do in this facility from a tournament standpoint. And then so finally, right, this is more of a 3D rendering view, bird's eye view of what this thing could look like. All right, so it gives you a little bit of depth and breadth to the site, right? Taking a car as a measurement, right, on how big a car is, you can see how much this really expands. So our estimate is that this facility would take about 60 acres as it's built right now for what's currently being rendered. Right, so ideally you would look to have more than that, right, 70, 80, 90 acres for future field development, for expanding parking, for adding trail systems and that sort of thing.
One thing I noticed on this drawing is there's no lights on the multipurpose fields.
It's a rendering, so it's not that they're not included.
Is that not included in the price?
They are. They're in that 300 to 500.
Okay.
And as we look at this, right, from the indoor side, we don't have to go back to it, but we're not at the place where we want the door to swing left versus right, and
Right.
put this room over here or that room over
No,
there.
I was just gonna say it makes a difference because soccer teams are gonna want to release those fields after 6 o'clock.
For sure.
So they're gonna need lights for that.
Right. Yeah, and that 300 to 500,000 includes lights, includes scoreboards. You can't put all of that minutia up on all of this stuff. Like the baseball fields would have scoreboards, and you don't see batting cages out there right now just because it starts to get a little tough to render all of that stuff. So then we started looking at land. And so from a site option standpoint, right, option 1 was city-owned land at I-20 and 385. The magenta is the city-owned land. What you can't see is that underneath the magenta is light blue. Everything except 1 acre is in a floodplain. So you cannot vertically build in a floodplain. So you can build fields, you can build parking lots. So this would be fine for a field facility. You wouldn't be able to build the indoor complex on this site. The pros of this, obviously it's city-owned, there's infrastructure. The cons, like I said, it's in a floodplain. The proximity to the sheriff's office and the jail, and then the location being south of the city. It's not in the current path of future development. And so you start to lose out on opportunities because of its location. Option 2, I-20 and 338. Again, the majority of this is in a floodplain. It's in an industrial area, which, you know, in sports complex world, perception is everything. And so if you're in more of an industrial area, you know, tucked behind warehouses, there's a perception to that that has to be taken into account. And so there's limited future development down here for the amenities that you would look for that would complement a sports complex, right? Hotels, restaurants, retail, housing, and that sort of thing. Option 3, McKnight Family Ranch land, located behind the Home Depot, and this map certainly goes up and to the right. There's more than enough land. There's infrastructure there. It's partially owned, right? Again, the magenta is city-owned land. There's also an easement that runs off of that land that could be used for future trail service. It is in proximity to other amenities. Some of the challenges from the conversations we've had may be hard to overcome, specifically the Houston Trust owning the mineral rights. It is privately owned, so there would be a conversation to be had whether or not that land is sold, donated, leased, whatever is for a different day. And part of the site is in a floodplain, though the amount of land that's available is pretty vast. So option 4, Parksbell Ranch area. Again, more than enough land. It's both a con and a pro. Currently, there's not a lot of amenities there, but it is right in the path of all future development, or the majority of future development. It is partially owned by the city, and it, again, is privately owned, so a conversation has to be had on what that looks like. And then 5th, this is Councilman Thompson and Gopi, myself, Matt, were part of a meeting today with ICA, who offered up this area, and I wasn't able to get down into the details like I did with the others, but the area that's circled is land right off of Yukon Road as it crosses over the bridge. We don't know the amount of land in its totality. They originally offered up 20 acres of land, but said that there's well more than that if the city so chose to explore that option. They didn't disclose a price. They did say they were willing to help the city. They can see this as a hub for their other development that they're planning out there. That includes retail, multifamily housing, some industrial, and hotels. And so there's some work to be done, but we at least wanted to put it up here for your information, and, you know, again, have more conversations. The one thing that we did notice on this one is the major ingress and egress, Yukon Road, is 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction. So if you have 1,000 kids coming in here, what does that do, right? Perception is everything. If it's hard for mom and dad to get in and out, they're going to have a hard time coming back. And so that will be the same case with a lot of the parcels, is just a forward-thinking view on roads. and to the point on the water and things like that, what does the road infrastructure look like going to and coming from these different sites? And so again, kind of to start to wrap some of this stuff up, right, the recommendation then in a summary is to develop the 6-court facility with the outdoor fields, re-look at how the associations use current park and rec facilities. This was in the feasibility study. So that, Mayor, to your point, everybody is equal, everybody pays their fair share, and so that, you know, there's not necessarily winners and losers. Through Parks and Rec, continue to develop Park and Rec in-house programs to support what the associations are already doing. Consider the rinks as a part of a future phase. When there's capital that can be brought in by a private owner-operator for that component, and then that can easily be built on or bolted on to the current plan. And then the site rankings, right, best to least best, if we want to call it that. Parks Bell Ranch and or the ICA-owned land, pending further kind of exploration, would be first. McKnight Ranch would be second, and then down to the I-2338 piece, and then finally the I-2385 piece. Assuming the 6-court facility and the field complex are built in tandem, we projected total visitors as well as unique visitors and anticipated hotel room night stays, right? So, you know, between 150 and 200,000 visitors. Not all of them are unique, right? Some of those kids are coming back, right? Day after day, week after week. Unique visitors, 100,000 to 140,000. And it would generate between 15 and 20,000 hotel room nights. And so that's a lot of economic impact. And so as we look at economic impact, right, there's a couple of things, and I meant to highlight these a little bit better. So employment on the top left. So the development of this complex would create or sustain / support almost 300 jobs in the region. It will create some new jobs, direct jobs within the facility, direct jobs in complementary businesses that would develop themselves around the facility, and it would support the overall employment infrastructure in Odessa, right? So the workers that are already here, the gas station workers and the food service workers and whatnot. Output, right? So $30 million a year in total economic impact, and so that comes from visitor spending, registration fees, downstream economic impact from, you know, businesses that relocate here, then pay their workers go out and spend their money. So that's a tremendous amount of economic impact coming into the city. And then tax results, tax revenue, you know, it's $320,000 in tax revenue to the city, just as direct tax revenue from this complex. That doesn't incorporate or include any additional development that goes on with new businesses coming to town. So then funding options, right? We briefly spoke about these before. The preferred method is a public-private partnership with a leaseback. Because the overall goal is to not raise taxes and not issue bonds, not take on more debt for the city, and have this thing be able to prop itself up on its own accord through its own operations, so it doesn't have to be subsidized by the city. And so you can read through this. The city would provide some pre-development budget, some infrastructure, maybe some capital. There's a host of both tangible and intangible things that the city can do. The private side would bring the capital, develop the mutually agreed upon project, bring the expertise, experience to develop the project. It would be developed as a private project with municipal participation. The private developer would take the lead in that development process. The city could then lease back that complex so that it could be used as a community amenity for parks and rec use, rentals, host tournaments, and do all the things that this thing wants to do. If it's privately owned and continues to be privately owned, you lose a big piece of the community aspect of it, because there's an inherent profit motive that a private entity will have that doesn't always jive with what a public amenity should be, if that makes sense. So there wouldn't be free public use, right? You know, you and your kids couldn't come in and just shoot baskets whenever you wanted. There would always be a fee, right? Just like some of the trampoline park and other private businesses. And then the city could enter into different use agreements with the associations for rental use of the fields, of the courts, of the amenities, you know, based on a time use basis rather than just a maintenance basis. And so next steps, right? My recommendation is, this is a big thing to bite off. Don't go to council meeting tonight and vote yes or no, right? So assign this. Quality of Life Committee is an obvious good choice, but it's not for me to decide. Along with Parks and Rec, our assistants to further vet some of these open questions out. Come back, you know, within the next couple of months with kind of, here's the final way we can do this. Once it's approved, if it's approved by council, the development timeline is only about 12 months. And so this is not you guys aren't trying to build this on the side of a mountain. The construction process, a lot of this is going to be done over the next several months. And so once you press go can happen fairly quickly. And so, again, this is an arbitrary timeline, but just to show that, you know, an approval on August 1st, you could be opening before the beginning of next school year, let's say. And with that, I'll answer any questions. I know it's been a long session. You guys have got some other stuff coming up.
This sounds pretty good.
Well, I mean, the thing is that one of them is site location. We got some possibilities. We got a latecomer. They all have proposed their own challenges, but you have to narrow down where you know what's the best potential, because they all possess infrastructure challenges. And from that, you have to look at one, accessibility to major highway. Two, do you want to be able, because I mean, each of these locations are going to serve as an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Which one has the most options as far as being an anchor to residential and commercial, if that's possible? Because the thing is the rate of return is a lot quicker, of investment.
One of the big things we need to look at also that Jason brought up was the access to it.
Well,
because there's a lot of
the access is going to be the roads.
Right. There's been
so,
a lot of conflict review plans when it's just a 2-lane road and we're backed up for miles.
Well, the thing is, you're going to have to make and determine the length of the road from a major artery into the facility is going to have to be a 5-lane.
Right.
Okay. And so that possesses its challenges of right-of-way, cost. Do you shift costs from the annual maintenance to be able to pay for this? You know, and then you're talking about water and sewer, things of that nature. And so the determination is going to be based on the location and what's the most viable. Do we go for the most optics and the most return on investment, or do we go to the one that's going to be the less impact to the budget? And so I think those are the questions that we have to ask, and then we have to go find answers for. You know, we all can sit there like, man, I like that, but what goes into that site? Because all of them they're all pliers. They're all gonna, you know, retain water when it does rain. So there's an enormous amount of work in dirt, and so open to options. You know, how do we collect this data? How do we do it?
One comment I would make is the only 2-lane road is from the airport on this ICA option.
Oh, that you want?
Yeah, it's open now.
Yeah.
In case you didn't know.
Yeah.
But that's the only 2-lane piece.
Yeah.
Everything back to the west, to the north, and to the west is 4-lane divided.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you got, of course, 191 is, you know, you can work on the exit.
They still haven't made any plans in widening that yet, as of yet, have they? Midland?
No, but the suggestion, when Mr. Bushman asked us to meet today, one of the things, the ideas that I had, you know, I've been talking about this forever, is I want to talk to TxDOT about taking Yukon from Parksville to 385. And then at the same time, could we not ask them to go from 191 where they're putting the overpass, TxDOT's doing that, and adding 2 lanes to the airport?
Yeah.
So, you know, of course, I'm sitting on the Motran board, so
Something we
that's,
can discuss with James.
yeah, talk to James about it, and you sit there too, and you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I've talked to Eric about that a little bit, so he's not opposed to doing it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what we want to trade off with him. But Yukon seems to be and that's on Motran's long-range plans.
Don't give away an artery for that one.
Not giving away any arteries, we need that artery.
Yeah.
Need to move some vehicles, but anyway, either one of those first two options look like pretty good options to me, but,
Agreed.
it's nice of John to
Yeah.
call today and ask us to meet with him, so.
And so do I hear consensus for location?
I don't think,
Or we're not there yet?
I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to discuss it
So
more.
let's discuss it more.
Committee.
So let's walk away with what is it that we want to discuss? Do we want to discuss on, okay, so what we posed on option for the ICA off of 191 is access. Access, infrastructure, utilities. Those are the top 3.
I would add 2 more.
What's that? What else?
Total acreage.
Do we know the acreage?
They're supposed to be
They're getting
getting
that
it
for
for
us.
us.
Okay.
Because it's bounded by,
So we need.
it's
so
bounded
that-
by Yukon,
Okay.
and then,
Dorado.
and Dorado, and two,
Right.
to be developed roads. So we want to find out what's
So
in that
we want
square.
to know what the total acreage is.
And then
That's number 1.
cost.
And they're working on that,
And
but
so
the
we're-
infrastructure is there.
And ideal, basically, you're saying is you want to have about 70 for future expansion.
Right. I think it's there. I noticed some things on the map that I pointed out.
Yeah.
Some of it's in a floodplain.
Yeah, so initially the 20 was the supply.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
But they weren't opposed to more at all today.
all right. So then the second one, was it?
Parksville.
Parksville. And that one, we know there's no utilities. There's a lot of dirt work to be done. Access, because it goes into residential area. Yeah, that's where all the development is going. And the location is to the extreme northeast. But road access, infrastructure, dirt work, more than enough acreage, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. it's
Okay.
nice acreage.
And just willingness to partner, I guess, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's pretty favorable. And
Because that could be the teeter-totter, right? ICA is going to sell it, their land versus,
Yeah, yeah. And then the fourth would be McKnight, which
Right.
has the utilities, but once again, it's access.
access
But the-
and
but
the Houston Trust.
Houston Endowment is
Or
a
Houston
big,
Endowment.
and minerals. Okay. So, do we do this through the committee?
Sure,
All right.
do that.
We're
We
good
have a
about it?
committee already set up.
Yeah.
I think you knew that.
All right. So you'll be working with Matt to try to get that information and start narrowing it down?
Yeah, we can set up some.
Just one other question.
Yes, sir.
In your scenarios, you posed in the options 2 ice rinks. Why just the 2? Why 2?
So going from 1 to 2, so 1 still loses money, around $300,000 per year, annually. By having 1 rink, you cut off your nose to spite your face. You've got the ability to do some things, but not enough to really do a lot of things. Right, so if you're using 1 for hockey practice, well, then you can't have any public skating. So you're between a rock and a hard place.
Scheduling becomes an issue,
Right.
and when it's being used, can't be used for anything else.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's basically it's having 1 venue without the capabilities of cutting it to have several venues that going on at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
And so then you really start to limit your revenue potential. Because if there's 8 kids on a sheet of ice practicing,
shut down
an
the whole-
association may be paying $300 for that, but you're foregoing 150 people paying $10 to public skate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I was just wondering, if there was another reason why the scenario for the 2 rinks,
Yeah.
other than revenue.
Right.
I know, I mean, it's an option, but there's not enough birthday parties on the weekend to make this thing profitable. And it's a tough choice. It becomes a
Right.
priority. It's not a no,
It's just a no right now.
Just no right now.
Right. If there's a operator, an investment group that wants to come in and bolt it on, privately run it, that's certainly a possibility, right? They would have the advantage of infrastructure and, you know,
I will tell you, in the 25 years that I have been dealing with some sports complex or another, it's probably the best option proposal that I've ever heard. It actually gives some real options. That's the first time I ever heard that, you know, you're certain about the profitability. I've never heard of that.
Yep.
You know, I'm cynical in that because I've never seen it and
Sure.
I've never heard it. Okay, so, any other questions?
I have one. I may have missed something, but this hypothetical with the exterior of the building, how does the bleachers or any seating for the public work in that
Yep.
plan?
Yeah, so
I know
again-
the track could be brought up.
right, so, again, it's a rendering, it's a floor plan.
Yeah, right.
Typically, we would do retractable seating.
Okay.
So they would be pushed into the sides.
Okay.
They would be brought out. The track is, it's kind of like Lego blocks. So that portable track gets broken up into sections, gets put into a shipping container, gets stored somewhere off-site. And then when it's track season, it gets put up. They run track for 3 or 4 months. It gets taken down again. But between the courts, you can have portable bleachers, right, for your Monday through Thursday, you know, go watch your kids, your grandkids play basketball. For larger tournaments, you'd bring your retractable seating out where you could seat 3,000 or 4,000 people.
And that would be the storerooms then, would have that, and keeping that?
So they retract back into the walls.
Actual back into
Yeah.
the walls, okay.
Right.
Beautiful.
And then, you know, again, now you've got 4,000 seats that you can host a concert, or a graduation, or.
It goes back to what you said earlier, you know, how do you have this facility operating on Tuesday morning
Yep.
at 10 a.m.?
Right.
You know, because you still got to pay for the square footage.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for the
Yes,
sake of
sir.
time. Thank you for that
Thank
presentation.
you.
We're going to move on to item 8. Chief Kirk, I apologize. I will now instruct the city secretary, even though you're late on the item to the agenda, we'll put you up towards the front. I saw you doze off a few times.
A few times.
So, Chief Kirk, you got item 8.
Okay, so this should be really, really quick. This is just a request to amend our budget by $630,000, $630,261.95 per year moving forward. This is on our Axon contract that this body agreed on last January, January of '22.
This is all
But the money's.
technology that we got, right?
That's correct. So that's the body cams, the in-car cameras, the RMS system, I mean, the whole works. But apparently that money was never moved over to an account in the PD line. So the monies didn't exist there to pay those bills.
Okay, so we've taken care, city manager, we've taken care of that?
Yes, sir, we're waiting for this.
For
This
the action?
approval tonight.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, Dan, what do we have to do? Get a consensus,
Just get a consensus.
put it on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, does this help, you don't have no timeline, anything?
No, Axon has been very good working with us on this, so.
How long has it been delayed?
They'll give us 2
Year?
weeks.
A year?
It's since November, yeah.
I thought it was January, February 20th, anyway.
I'd like to be consensus number one.
Just a consensus and we'll.
Yeah,
get
just
it.
consensus. The consensus that we're basically gonna move over the money, so that way pay our bills. Okay. I get it.
Yeah, we gotta get a credit rating up.
We got to just pay it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to do this. So I'm sure pretty much is there consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Chief, thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
We're gonna move on to item 9.
Mayor, I'd be glad to table that one. That was on my request, because I just don't know if there's a policy in place, and we can talk about that later.
Okay, so we
It's not
have
a big deal.
is that a formal motion?
It is.
Okay, so we have a motion to table item 9 by Councilman
second.
Thompson, second by Councilman Mata. All in favor indicating by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicating by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously. We're gonna move on to item 10. Seeing that there's no more business before this city council in this work session, I have a motion by Councilmember
So moved.
Swan.
I'll
Second
second
by
it.
Councilmember Vasquez. All in favor indicating by saying aye. All opposed indicating by saying nay. Motion passed unanimously. We are adjourned. We'll see you here in less than 30 minutes.